Welcome back to the Comics Aficionados live right here on Thinking Critical YouTube. We're a man down, but Art Thibert, I believe, will be here in the not too distant future. But we got lots of fun stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about that Tom Brevoort, Marvel Canon Doesn't Matter stuff. We'll get into the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Probably hit up some of this DC Jim Lee stuff, maybe even the ongoing G.I. Joe book. But we've got some fantastic people here. First up, we got returning Dylan. You actually read Absolute Power #1?
Yes, I did.
Are you calling me a fool for skipping?
No, not at all.
Oh.
The only good aspect of that book is Dan Mora, and that's it. So
the only good aspect of that book is that it was over.
It's not over.
It's still going. Yeah,
it's the first.
It's over for Doc.
3 more after this.
Oh no! I meant the issue was over.
Well,
and you don't mean that. You don't mean that in wrestling terminology. It wasn't over in that way.
No.
No, it's just bad and definitely not worth reading. So
Jim liked it, right? Jim?
Yep.
I'm out on Dan. I'm sorry, Mark Waid, not Dan Moore. He's great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's out.
He needs to be hired away either by Ghost Machine or by Mark Miller.
Please don't Ghost Machine. Don't. Oh, Dan Moore. I thought you were talking about Mark Waid. I was like, no, don't.
No, God, oh, no. How did I? Oh, no.
But Jim, you really you recommend Absolute Power?
Yep. Yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it was a decent start, better than anything in an event that I think that we've had since Forever Evil. But that's me. I'm a dummy.
Oh, Dylan, you didn't like Forever Evil either?
No, I'm just saying since Forever Evil. I feel like we've had, because that was a long time ago. I enjoyed Forever Evil.
Oh, I did too. I'm saying the events that we've had since have sucked.
I thought Beast Mode was fine.
It started out okay. I thought it ended up kind of getting a little
because it's all Amanda Waller at the end.
Yeah.
I liked all the Dark Knight's metal tie-ins more than the story itself.
Yeah, that main story was bad.
Yeah,
it was kind of weird. There we go. But you didn't read Batman 150, The Big Milestone?
No, I haven't. I've been off of Chips RC's Batman for a while. I hate Failsafe, and I hate everything that had to do with that, and so I just jumped off, and I have no regrets about that, because every time I peek in and see something, or I'll pick up an issue just to check, it's awful. So I did not read Batman 150.
Batman 150, I think, was worse than most, but there we go. Are you excited about Superman? We're starting to see some of these images coming out from the Superman movie.
I mean, I'm optimistic. I hope it's good. I really like James Gunn's last movie, Guardians 3. So the suit I'm mixed on. I think the colors are great. I like the cape. I like the shorts. All that looks good. But the MCU / New 52 sort of over design, the high collar, not a fan of that. So the suit I'm kind of mixed on. But Corn Sweat looks good as Superman. He looks like Superman. So yeah, it'll be interesting. See how
Guy Gardner is the real problem.
Yeah, well, are you talking about his suit or just Guy Gardner existing?
The way he looks.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole storytelling thing, though, because him and Hawk Girl look awful, but that's a whole thing because Maxwell Lord is going to be their, benefactor, and so it's going to be a whole storytelling device about how they're, the corporatized superheroes, and Superman comes in and, inspires, and then they'll get their new suits. That's why their suits look awful, and they all look the same.
He's got a real bad haircut, which I guess Guy Gardner's supposed to have. I kind of appreciate him with he's got the flat top.
It's not red enough. That's my problem with it. I don't care that it's the bowl cut because that's Guy Gardner. Then you could give him the flat top later, But we can't complain that they're sticking close to the comic books, can we?
I just think Nathan Fillion should be Hal Jordan.
Well, that's
too
true.
old.
He's a little old, though, for what they want to do.
I think John Cena should be Guy Gardner with that stupid haircut.
It would be much better.
And his bald spot.
I like Peacemaker to a degree.
Is John growing his hair out so much because he's doing the comb back over the bald spot? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Yeah. No more flat top.
Yeah, that's the only explanation that I have for it, because he's got a rather sizable bald spot at this point.
He's got the money to not have a bald spot. I don't understand that.
It's testosterone levels. They're through the roof.
I don't understand when rich people go bald. I don't understand when rich people are fat. You have the means to not be any of those things.
I like the Michael Jordans. I'm going bald. I'll just pick it. Just go with it.
Well, yeah, no, but that's cooler. You're Jason Statham.
I want to see Michael Jordan with fucking plugs.
if he goes and gets those good Jeremy Piven plugs or those Joel McHale plugs, come on, you'd be like, yeah, right on.
Yeah, because Jeremy Piven was fucking bald in PCU.
Mm-hmm.
And then he suddenly grew hair.
Chavo Guerrero too, man. Like these are guys that were totally bald and they came back with good heads of hair. So like whoever their guy is, fantastic.
All right, Aaron. Well, I guess we got to get back on to the introductions. Welcome back to the channel, Aaron. You've got something popping off in the not too distant future. When is Kneel Before Doomface going live?
So I'm waiting for some legal paperwork to be finished up. We want to launch at the end of July after Comic-Con, but it might be first week of August. But like everything's coming together as far on the creative side, like all the pieces that we need have kind of come together and are pretty much ready to go. The little bit of extra time that I'm getting waiting on on all the legal stuff to go through has given me time to like commission a few more things. So we will have a few more surprises before launch.
Very nice. Are you getting nervous or excited?
Oh, I'm stressed out of my mind.
Oh no, are you sleeping? Is the bearded dragon noticing?
Yeah, I mean he's noticing. Like remember when just last week, Wes, I had a full head of hair on this show. Now I got to go get plugs.
There we go. Anything else big time going on with Aaron Sparrow? You going on any of the big shows that you like to visit every once in a while?
Nothing scheduled in the immediate future, but some stuff coming up.
Very nice. Who else we got? We got Jim from Weird Science. How you doing, Jim?
Lovely.
How's everything going on the channel? I guess I don't plug the channel enough. You got any big videos people should check out?
No, nothing.
Did you hit up Neil Gaiman?
What's that? Did I have?
Did you hit up the Neil Gaiman story?
No, I did not. I don't even know what story you're talking about. I'm behind the curve here, I guess. But yeah, just the same old reviews and regular shows that people have. Whatever. Gone.
Neil
and seen.
Gaiman was accused of sexual assault.
Was
in
he?
New Zealand or something? By two women.
Does it count in New Zealand? I'm not sure, but that I didn't know anything.
Does it count when they're a male feminist? I feel like that's just like they've already announced it.
I think assault is assault. It doesn't matter what your persuasion when it comes to
no. What I mean is
credo.
Is it actually news? Because I feel like the minute they say that they're a male feminist, they've already announced that they've probably committed sexual assault at some point.
Well, that's why it's not. I just call it smoke screening. Like whenever you see somebody come out, like especially like a professional, anybody who's a male in this field, they come out really hard in the paint against something. It just makes me go, "What are you smoke screening? What are you smoke screening in your past?" I mean, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but male feminist is both a description and a warning.
My goodness, this got serious quick. I'm sorry, Jim. I was trying to have fun with you.
It's fun. It's fine. Yeah, the channel. It's doing the things. Just the normal reviews and things like that.
What'd you review this week? You got Absolute Power Up.
Absolute Power, Spider-Man Reign. Got some Wolverine Deep Cut, stuff like that. A bunch of things, and then just regular shows and best of and stuff.
I've got to review Spider-Man Reign 2 for the Patreon. That's the exclusive review this week, and I'm looking forward to it.
Amazingly, it happened to end up on our best of the week because Gray loved it. Gray thought it was the best book, and I didn't think so, but he picked it.
Yeah, Drew might have also picked Spider-Man Reign 2 for the best of the week.
That's tough.
So, I mean, I love Carrie Andrews. He's a great artist, great writer. Sometimes not everything's gonna hit with me, so we'll be talking about that one. But I will be putting out a disclaimer that this is not a West pick.
Yeah,
I think this
I
is
did
a
that
little
as
too
well.
weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness! So what else we got? We got Doc. Doc and I have already recorded a couple videos. Back in the swing of things. Back on the Aficionados. What's your next domestic calling, Doc? Are you gonna go to like a cheerleading camp and get the pies and the water together and everything?
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. I got nothing on the schedule right now, man. It's kind of dope. Feel like I'm getting back into my normal routine. Going to be starting to do some more travel again for business in the not too distant future. Aaron, I'll hit you up. I'll be out in LA in September.
Awesome.
So what do we got to do to convince you to go read Wolverine Deep Cut #1 from Chris Claremont and Edgar Salazar?
Well, you had to inform me like 10 minutes before the show started that it exists. Because I legitimately, I am not going to disagree with you. I am just going to say that up until 10 minutes ago, I did not know it existed. So sure. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I mean, fuck's sake, you made me read Venom number 35. I read that piece of shit. And so
I mean, Avengers or Venom 35. You stopped reading for 2 years and you picked up on the same story.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like even Ram V got bored with that story, and he's been writing the same fucking story for 4 years.
Yeah, hasn't been very good. So I do want to say thank you very much to all the guests. We're going to have a good time here today, but we do have to do some Patreon shout-outs. Thank you to everyone that supports Think Critical on Patreon. Got lots of awesome stuff, exclusive podcasts featuring Doc, Jim, and Aaron Sparrow. I guess we've got the trinity of Thinking Critical Patreon right here. First up, thank you very much to Brad Frederick, returning the Phantom Hero himself, the protector of Invisible Isle. Also, thank you very much to Dominic Mason, a.k.a. Stoneheart, the protector of Heroes Harbor. And finally, thank you very much to Chuck Skills, who protects the people of Metropolis as Crossover. Really appreciate you support the channel. Hope you enjoy everything that we got on over there. And if you have not checked out, there is a link in the video description. We do have a few super chats. Callum says last week was awesome and was so that Jim Lee video, because who has $30,000 for a drawing? But between Jim Lee and Slot, I don't know who is lazier.
Look,
at least Jim Lee draws it and doesn't make Christos Gage do it for him.
Yeah, he doesn't. Jim doesn't have ghost artists for him. Also, let's be perfectly honest. If Jim's commission rates were even $5,000, he would have a line until 2 decades after he died. That's how long his wait list would be.
Would you spend $35,000 on a Jim Lee?
No, because I don't have that stupid amount of money. But there are people that do. Yes, there are people that do. And look, I'm sorry, you can't. I understand like the whole, the urge to democratize art and whatever, but some people are just so in demand that if they don't put some outlandish number on it,
hey, I'm all for the free market. The market decided he could charge $35,000, and I think he should do it. I just wish he was doing a better job as the publisher at DC Comics.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, and I completely understand that. I mean, hey, Brett Booth, every time somebody asks him to draw on one of the blank covers, he raises the price by $1,000. I think he's up to like $15,000 to do a blank cover sketch, but you can get a commission for him for like a couple $100. Just don't ask him to draw on one of those fucking blank covers.
He doesn't like it. He doesn't like the paper.
He hates the paper, so every time somebody asks, he raises the price by $1,000. It's literally a joke with him at this point. I mean, I guarantee if you throw like $30,000 at him, he'll be like, "Fuck it, yeah, I'll draw on that piece of shit." But
it's not the concept of a blank cover; it's the paper quality that he doesn't want to use the Sharpie on.
Yes, he does not want to draw on that. But look, Jim gets what he gets because people will pay it. They always will. And hey, it's unfortunate. Would I love to get a Jim Lee commission? Fuck yes. But so would absolutely everyone else if it was a reasonable price point. The point is he has to make it an outlandish price point, or else he'll never have a life.
Let me ask you this, Doc. Well, I mean, he's got plenty of time not running DC.
Yeah.
He could be doing all these sketches.
Well,
let me ask you this, Doc. You can get one sketch from either Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri. Which way you going?
I got to go Silvestri.
That's the right choice.
There we go. Yeah. Calvin always says that new Hellboy Crooked Man trailer is a joke.
I thought it was a fan-made movie.
I saw pictures of it and I was like, okay, there's a new Hellboy movie.
They're making a new Hellboy movie, dude.
With the dude from Stranger Things?
No. That guy's already gone because of how bad the movie with him performed. A different studio picked up the license and is doing another somebody else is doing another Hellboy movie. It looks like somebody made it in their backyard. Like they shot it with their iPhone.
But I thought Chronicle was a good movie. Like, I think that'd be fine, right? Found footage.
Chronicle is good, but this is from the guy that like co-directed Crank. And,
Crank.
And also co-directed that Ghost Rider movie. So
Yeah,
It's
the Spirit of Vengeance goes the one where he pees fire and drives the giant excavator and turns that into a he makes that thing flaming.
Yeah. It is Mike Mignola. It's his favorite story. I think he's just trying to get it out there. But the story itself, if you actually read the comic, not much goes on. I don't know how they're going to do it. The Hellboy hardly does a thing in it. He just walks around and he's kind of wandering around with people, and it's all in just backwoods Appalachia, some mines. Like there's no set pieces, and it's not an action story. It's just straight up horror. So I don't know what they're doing.
New to me.
To get the guy that co-directed Crank to do that.
Now,
It's weird that that's who you get for your like scaled back, slow paced. Like
it's very.
I still think the
slow-paced.
first Hellboy movie was awesome with Ron Perlman.
Nobody needed more than one Hellboy movie.
Yeah.
I didn't like the second one. So there we go.
I
Lade
liked some of the
says
stuff in the second one. Like, you know, it was nice to see some of the things in there, but yeah, it was not a good film. And then that David Harbour one. Ooh.
exactly. Lade says, so for August, what about a review of Gotham City Sirens 1 through 4 from Wes and Aaron, just so they can get some more Leah Williams action and Half Naked Cowboys?
What does Lane want to do to us? Like we already had to watch The Acolyte. Now he wants us to read Leah Williams. Lane's just torturing us. You know what? He's avenging Doc. This is your fault, Wes. Because of what you put Doc through, Lane has taken up his sword and shield to defend Doc and make us do the same thing. I don't know how I got caught up in this.
Chance that Venom 35 was going to be a perfectly fine comic book this week.
No, there isn't.
Well, there wasn't after I picked it after I read it. So, I mean, I did go out of my way to pick that one on purpose. But I don't want to read Gotham City Sirens 1 through 4, but I'll do it. It's Leah Williams, so they'll read like 5 minutes each. It'll be fine.
It's true.
Yeah.
And
We'll probably get on that one.
They'll read like they've been written by an actual like Barbie doll.
On every page, they should just post some of they should just like drop in one of the pictures of Leah Williams that she takes of herself from that downward angle, you know, so you just get the cleavage in there every time. Like they just need to put that on there so you're reminded as you go through the book and you're like, why does this exist? Like why would anyone hire this person? And then you look and you go, oh, that's why.
Yeah, I mean the one that she takes to hide the fact that she's fat.
Oh my goodness, jeez. What are we not positive anymore, Doc?
I never was.
Cal says, did the Me Too girls wait 20 years as usual?
Doc's positive she's fat.
Yes,
I don't think they waited 20 years. No,
I thought that this was from a long time ago.
I think it's more like 10 years ago.
It's been brought up before, I think, and then it just kind of resurfaced, I guess, because maybe there's some movement on it or some legal action going on.
There's some type of investigation where they made videos about it.
Yeah, it's been out in the ether before.
Well, so one of them was 20 years ago, so it was 2003, and then the other one was from 10 years ago. I guess.
It's one of those things where you're like, well,
every
hey,
10 years he strikes.
Innocent until proven guilty, and then he comes out in his own defense and he says a bunch of things like, you know, that reveal a bunch of creepy behavior, and then you're like, well, now I don't know. It's not by what they're saying necessarily. It's by what you're saying, Neil. What you're saying about your lifestyle.
The Jeepers Creepers. Or
Yeah,
that every
it
50
gives you
years?
Yeah, it's like, hey, I hired a nanny, and within a half hour, I was cuddling her in the bathtub. What?
Gal says, but on the Hellboy 2019, I was disappointed the most that Mila Jovovich didn't morph into a dragon like she does in the comics. I'd rather just see Mila Jovovich. You know,
I endured a lot of bad Resident Evil movies just to watch Mila Jovovich kick zombies in the face. So
you get a plaid skirt.
Okay, so out of those two terrible franchises, well, actually, I would say Underworld is way better as a franchise than the Resident Evil movies.
Yes,
but Kate Beckinsale obviously takes the lead in that. But that is in no way a diss to Mila Jovovich.
Nah, I mean Resident Evil wasn't all that great, but it's fun to look at, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like I said, the first Hellboy movie is perfectly fine. I don't know why they even keep making these, but there we go. Lade says in September, October, Doc and West are going to review Exceptional X-Men. We got a preview. It'll be up tomorrow. There was a preview that came out this week with 4 or 5 pages of X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Exceptional X-Men, and Doc and I looked through them and gave our thoughts.
Well, we gave thoughts. I'm pretty sure there was more thoughts in our response than there was in the creation of the books, though.
Jim, what do you think we think is going to be the worst book between X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, and Exceptional X-Men?
Exceptional.
You are correct.
I was going to go NYX. I thought you were going to.
There was not a preview in there.
Yeah.
It was just the 3 main books, really.
Well,
they actually had lettered and full pages.
Yeah, I was going to say there was technically a preview of NYX, but it was just some unlettered, word bubbled pages that were just.
Well, then it's actually better than when it comes out. It doesn't have the dialogue, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Except for Miss Marvel's on the page, so I don't know if you can actually make it worse by adding words. It might not be possible. Now that is a decent thought exercise. Can you make a Miss Marvel comic worse by adding word bubbles, or is here mere presence as bad as it can get?
Both.
Let's get to the business, fellas. You guys are just goofing around here. We had this Substack thing where Tom Brevoort, the senior editor executive at Marvel Comics, their longest tenured employee at this point, was at one point in the continuity Gestapo, I guess, at Marvel Comics, made sure that everything had to make sense. Basically said we shouldn't think about this stuff, Doc. You shouldn't think about their ages. You shouldn't think about when things happen within the timeline. Otherwise, you're just going to argue with people, and it's not really that important.
This seems like Mr. Continuity Führer is having a problem with his old job. Art, welcome aboard.
Mr. Thibert.
Hey, good morning, all. Sorry I'm running a little late. Just got up, actually.
Welcome.
Is early, isn't it?
But no, the continuity Führer over there is seems to be really, really mad that people actually care about it. I mean, look, it's not like Marvel built its entire business model on people understanding the order in which things happen and the importance of those things happening in certain orders so that we can tell a coherent grand narrative. That's not like that's Marvel's business model or anything. No, instead we're just gonna get fuck it, let us do whatever we want. You people shouldn't complain when we don't take any time to actually figure out if this makes any logical sense at all. Fuck you, consume product and be excited for new product.
Well, what I took from it is that, Tom Brevoort hasn't cared in a long time, and he's saying, I don't care anymore, so neither should you.
Mr. Thibert, obviously you worked for Marvel Comics, and you might have been in close proximity to Mr. Brevoort over the years. Am I crazy for thinking that really continuity and canon is the secret sauce that holds the Marvel Comics universe together? And once you don't take it seriously and abide by it and treat it as important, then people really do have a reason not to invest long term?
Well, just to go back in time, I mean, the Marvel Universe was created all at one time. It was always intended to be one coherent universe. You know what I mean? It wasn't like DC where it was kind of a mishmash of IP. Marvel was like, it was all one world. So the continuity always kind of seem like it was inherent and built into the fabric of the design. I do understand like some of the creative problems with continuity, especially over, you know, as many decades as there's been. So it's a little tough to do that stuff. But, you know, when I worked on the Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimate X-Men, you know, they pretty much ditched the continuity and started a new continuity that was based on the original. But that was kind of an Elseworlds tale. So I think you can do stuff like that. I don't know about ditching, you know, the main universe continuity. I mean, there are people like you guys were saying that love that continuity. I don't know if you can just ditch it, but why not? I mean, everything that they're doing right now seems like it's contemptuous towards the main comic book supporters and readers, you know, like the old guys that they don't want anymore, you know. So I don't know, that seems like a natural fit too. Just like, well, we got contempt for everybody, let's throw away the continuity as well. All the characters that they created we don't recognize anymore anyway, so you know what I mean? Why not?
Tom Brevoort is an old guy that I don't want anymore.
That's the way it should be. So I do think that they would like to court this younger audience, and we do have a younger member of the panel. We do have Dylan here today. You know, with somebody that's in his mid-20s, you know, these characters have been around, you know, in the case of Marvel for 60+ years, other than Captain America, really, and Namor. DC Comics, you got to go back 80 years, even longer than that for Batman, Superman. But, you know, they did the Crisis stuff in 85 or whatever. Is it an impediment to a new reader that's younger, realizing that there's all this history that you have to catch up on to understand the character?
No, not at all. I think that's part of the fun as well. When you dive in, you realize there's things you're missing out on. You can go and check that out. I read that article you linked to. It was kind of weird because in it he's talking about, he's like, actually, you know, we don't really need canon. Stuff doesn't really matter. It's like, that's your job. Why are you? It feels weird if I went out and like tried to say why my job doesn't matter and we shouldn't do this stuff and like why I shouldn't have to do it. That felt weird, especially we just had that Life of Wolverine book that came out this week, where it was all just nailing down like the continuity of his life and when things happened, and now we're having this where actually like nothing matters and anything can be anything. Felt really weird.
That is a great observation. It's kind of like the garbage man that decides he's not going to pick up the trash anymore. It's just not important.
Yeah, if he just went on his soapbox, it's like, listen, we don't really need to go out there and collect the garbage. It's not that big of a deal. If you're like, what? Why are you talking about this?
Yeah, like shut up and do your job. That's what I want to say to Tom Brevoort every time he opens his mouth. Shut the fuck up, old man, and do your job. You're not that much older than me, and I'm still going to call you an old man.
Well, you know what's weird about comic companies is that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
And I was going to say, we've got two comic companies where the people at the top or near the top have no interest in doing their job and are telling you that they're not interested in doing their job. And then the industry has the nerve to go, why is everything so bad? Why are comic shops closing? Why are we in trouble? When they actually admit it.
Right. Well, when I was working over at Marvel just before, you know, they gave me the axe, they started downsizing anyway. They got rid of all the senior editors. So editors used to oversee like the Spider-Man, you know, group or the Fantastic Four group, things like that, right? So these were editors that cared. They understood the mythology of the IP that they were stewarding and all that. And then all of a sudden, all the senior editors got eradicated, except for Ralph Macchio and Tom Brevoort. And so their job was not only the franchise that they had, you know, that they were editing, but they were to oversee everything. Two guys, like out of all these editors that used to do it, there were two guys, you know, that had to read all the scripts and make all the, you know, continuity changes and all that stuff. And I thought at that point, that was kind of the beginning of the end, you know, like, why would you do that? You know, there are people that love the Fantastic Four that are editing the Fantastic Four. They're making sure that, you know, the stories are good, the characters are in character, all that stuff. And then you just fired them all just to save money. And then you got a bunch of CBs and what was it? It's Nick. Do you know his name, Aaron?
Nick Lowe.
Nick Lowe, yeah. And those guys were new hires when I was working there. They worked under Ralph, and then even CB. I remember when he got his first job. What a weasel that dude was. You know, so they just hired a bunch of newbies, and now those guys are running, you know, the publishing division and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
It seems like you have, you know, look, if I walked into my job every day and told them how much I didn't want to be there and how much I don't want to do my job, I would be fired.
Yeah.
I mean, look, and maybe it's the fact that they can't find anyone else willing to do that fucking job for $35,000.
That's a lot of it. Yeah.
And I think these people understand that they understand that they don't even they can just flat out refuse to do their job. And there's no one that they're going to be able to replace them with because no one else is willing to take the fucking job at the price that they're paying.
Yeah. I think that it's weird because like Tom Brevoort is saying, I don't want to do my job, but he's making it seem like that's his job. Like he's saying, like, I'm going to tell you guys, this is my job now, not doing my thing and telling you what you should do or whatnot. It just seems like things get wonky and he doesn't want to answer questions on continuity. And they want new readers, but that doesn't do it. Like Dylan said, you need some basis for things.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of like continuity and things, how do you guys feel about one and dones? Like start telling more one and dones, so they're you know, maybe some of this continuity and these things that they always say is a problem. I never had a problem with like Earth 1, Earth 2, and all these different things as a kid. It was just more stuff to read. But the industry kind of signed off on that whole continuity thing. Like, oh, we just gotta, you know, like I don't clean house and condense everything to one kind of simple narrative because, you know, kids are stupid and they can't understand Earth 1 and Earth 2, you know. I mean, how do you guys feel about like maybe more one and dones?
I don't think the problem is one and dones don't get people invested. It doesn't give them an incentive to come back next month.
Well, it kind of does, because if it's a good story, you want to hear another good story, you know?
Yes, but that it has to rely completely on the story being worth it.
Which is what it should be. It should be judged on its own merits.
I absolutely. I agree. No. I do agree on that part. But right now, the talent in the industry is just not there to do it. At least in the mainstream.
You would burn through so many people in the current mainstream, because with each issue art, you'd be asking for a new story. And
that's exactly why they don't do it. Yes.
Yeah. As you've seen with so many of these creators, they don't have that many stories. I mean, look at how quickly Scott Snyder burned himself out. Yeah. Now he's always trying to recapture that Court of Owls kind of glory. Like, I'm going to do another big story. It's like, you know, you can scale back and tell some small stories.
Well, then you realize how brilliant like somebody like Marv Wolfman or Lynn Wein were, you know, or Chris Claremont. You know, these guys were coming up with like one and dones Stan Lee, you know. But I do think, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be all one or all the other. That's one thing that I've noticed that's wrong with this industry, is everybody kind of like, oh, this is the way it's going to be, so everything's going to be that way. I think that's kind of narrow as far as thinking. I think one and dones and, like, you know, extending plot lines, things that go over a series of issues, things like that. But I think the same argument could apply to both. Like you could use an ongoing like storyline, you know, miniseries, whatever, as a crutch, or you can use like one and dones as like a crutch. But
I like the way that Ice Cream Man does it. You have a bunch, you know, a couple, like an anthology of one shots and things like that. That is pretty cool as well. But again, you have to have a lot of writers and a lot of stories. But that's worked out for a while.
I think when it comes to one and dones, you can do it effectively, but because you need some exceptional creators. Most creators these days only have one story. I mean, Wes and I just reviewed Venom 35, and I haven't read the book in 2 years. It's literally still telling the exact same story from the first 12 issues that I read. But what I think you can do effectively is, instead of trying to go for these big stories every time and just basically trying to hit the ball out of the park, is you can do one and dones as long as there's like a through line kind of B plot that is kind of bubbling under the surface, and that becomes the hook to get you to come back next month. Okay, the story this month, like the A plot, might be good, it might be great, it might be mediocre, it might be kind of bad, but you hook people in with that B plot. That's the thing that gets them to make sure they're back for the next issue.
And that's how it's always been done, like the past. That's how like good comic books were always written. There would be a dangling plot line, some kind of, like you said, B storyline that then would become the A storyline after a couple issues. And
in addition to that, because the full like one and done story is the reason why anthologies fail, because there is nothing to, you did a great 12 issue story or 12 page story or 22 page story in this 80 page anthology. Great, you did that. What the fuck's the reason for me to come back? If I skip 7 issues and I come back on issue 8, you didn't get me to come back for the next issue. You got me to come back sometime.
Yeah. But unlike an anthology, you do, like if it's a Spider-Man title, you always have Spider-Man in the story. It's the same creative people, the same cast of characters. So if you like Spider-Man, then, whether it's a one and done or an ongoing, I think you're going to enjoy it. As a kid, I had like my favorite titles, and those things I kind of bought religiously, especially even if the character
kept you coming back.
Yeah, even if the character crossed over in another book that you didn't like, you bought that book because your favorite character was in it. Yeah.
That's like the big thing. Like right now, there's not a good Spider-Man book. There's not really a good X-Men book in continuity. Captain America, I don't think, is very good. And those are the books that are supposed to be keeping you coming in every single week, essentially to keep up with the continuity and the shared universe. And then you're like, oh, that artist that I really liked over here is now on Incredible Hulk. I wasn't reading that. Maybe I'll check it out. And then you invest even more into it. But without having those really super strong titles that have awesome continuity, that are really building to something, that it really does give people a reason to walk away. I mean, Doc's been a lifelong reader, and there isn't a book that gets you into the comic shop every week anymore.
No.
Yeah, I also like the synergy.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I like the synergy within the books as well, with the continuity. And like Wes said, then, somebody pops up in a book and it's a storyline going, you just widen what you read. So
Sully is having an interesting conversation going on in the chat, where he said that, continuity is like a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. That you can, when you're tied to it, it kind of like limits your freedom as a writer and things like that. And I said, well, I think the difference is the talent that you hire. A great writer can come in and build on the foundations and build out from them. And hacks come in and all they know how to do is tear it down.
Well, I mean, okay, for instance, here's the thing. If we're going to go with the continuity doesn't matter, then characterization doesn't either, because the characterization is built through the continuity. I mean, what's to stop from making fucking Batman have super strength, fly, and shoot lasers from his eyes next month?
Or have Batman watching people burning buildings down and looting and saying, you know what? The insurance company is going to take care of that. It's not really my responsibility.
And this
happened in a book.
Yeah, DC had the story over continuity right before Rebirth, and that didn't work out well. Like they had to, go to Rebirth because of that. So I don't know. It just doesn't work.
It puts a limiter switch on people. Talented people can work within the constraints. Yep. Untalented people need to remove all those constraints in order to be able to tell something that most of the time isn't even interesting to anyone but themselves.
Well, a lot of times it's just the retelling of a story that's already been popular.
Yeah.
But constraints can actually breed creativity, because when you have certain guardrails that you can't jump, it forces you to come up with creative solutions to those problems. And so, you know, as much as I don't like getting, you know, I didn't like getting notes from Disney. Sometimes, you know, they'd give me a note and they'd say, you can't do this joke, you can't do this joke. And I'd be really upset, but then it would force me to think of a better joke, something that was more clever. Instead of going with the first thing that I thought of, like it really made me go, oh God, what am I going to do now? They said no to that. And then you have to come up with something else, and it ends up being better. So I think that a lot of times, you know, constraints breed creativity.
Well, look at Jaws, just real quick. You know, Steven Spielberg, the first one, the shark didn't work. So then he had to build up the mystery and all that stuff because he couldn't rely on the shark. And it became a way better movie. Like if that shark, that clunky shark, was in all those scenes and stuff, it wouldn't have been as cool. But you know, that the mystery, like the teasing of the shark and all that, that's what really hooked you in.
Yeah, so I just don't think ditching continuity is a good thing. And you know, you talked about Ultimate Spider-Man. Obviously, you worked on that and Ultimate X-Men stuff. What did they do in Ultimate Spider-Man that was really truly different than regular Spider-Man? They just went and told the exact same stories, but
well, you know what it
with
was,
different lens on it.
Yeah, when Bagley and I took it, we predicted instant death of it because John Byrne had just done that Spider-Man Year One. And so we were kind of convinced that there wasn't an audience to retell, you know, a Spider-Man origin kind of thing. But I think, what is it, 24, like long, what do they call it, long form storytelling?
Yeah.
Kind of coming into fashion. And so I think it was refreshing because, yeah, I don't think Bendis rewrote anything that was monumental or something, but what he was able to do is he was able to take things slower and kind of develop like all these little ideas that were always there. He was able to dedicate more time to them. You know what I mean? So then it seemed more real because this person was more like that 24. It was real time almost. You know, you got to see this stuff evolve in a long form. And I think it worked for the time. You know, I think just like everything, things run its course, stuff like that. But yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, he's kind of retelling things, you know, that happened before, but just in a long, you know, storytelling,
decompressed way.
Right? Like you could explore like little nuanced stuff that was just glossed over in the original, you know, Ditko, you know, Lee stuff.
And it made it fun. I mean, you could put a new twist on something that happened before, and maybe it did lead to some new ideas. Like Jessica Drew was actually the female Spider-Man clone in the original Ultimate Spider-Man, and she had actual spider powers and wasn't just happenstance that she was also Spider-Woman. You know, they were able to do some new stuff, but also, and they made it a little bit more accessible. You know, that decompressed storytelling was becoming a thing in the early 2000s. You know, Wildstorm had done a lot of that leading up to the Ultimate launch, and it made it interesting, but at the same time, you weren't really treading all that much new ground.
Well, what I would like to see is like do long form stuff, and then do one and dones, and then do stuff with plot lines that kind of like you tease with like a subplot, and then you by the third, you know, issue down the line, then you reveal what that whole buildup was about. And like it doesn't. That's the thing about this industry, even the business side of it. It just kind of does one thing and then does that to death. And then when the audience starts getting bored, then they go do something else, you know? And I think that's the problem. It doesn't have to be all one thing or the other. And I think then you could read Spider-Man and it would feel completely different than like a Hulk book, because maybe one is done more with what it does and one is done with more of a, you know, a ongoing storyline, or mix and match, you know. Spider-Man does it, Hulk does the other, you know. It doesn't really matter. But I think like creativity, when it's mandated and when it's dictated to, I think it can be a problem, especially if it's a bad mandate. You know, if it's a mandate like we're talking about, like we'll get rid of continuity. Well, already it's causing problems, and they knew it going into it, you know. But what I think what they do modern like publishing is they just want to get a reaction, you know, like this to them, you know, I don't know, excites them, talking about how crazy they are and how these decisions are killing comic books. You know, I don't understand why they are doing it, you know, other than to get some kind of twisted jolly out of it.
It's weird they've got a X-Men from the Ashes coming out, and in the book we've got Uncanny X-Men from Gail Simone, where Wolverine is part of a team in New Orleans, and we've also got Wolverine from Saladin Ahmed, where Wolverine is turning back on all mutants and has a new pack of like feral family members in Canada, but they're happening at the same time. Shockingly, that's overseen by Tom Brevoort, who thinks that Canada isn't an issue. It's like, how is this meld together? How does this become a line that even works together if you have the exact same character with two different frames of mind happening simultaneously?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I absolutely, it boggles the mind. I know that there's a lot of books being put out. There's a lot of storylines. There's a lot of things going on. So it does seem like it would be easy for him just to, you know, throw his hands up and just say, continuity doesn't matter. You know, we're just going to do.
You think that's what it is, because there's 80 books a month?
There's a mandate for 80 books a month that, you just have to go, you know what? I can't keep track of it. So guess what, everybody? It's just, it is.
Exactly. You know, let's do a crisis and kill them all and condense the storyline and do a bunch of year ones and start all over again.
Well,
because they just do the same story over time. How many new Spider characters can we have?
Well, I want to say something. I want to go back. You know, I'm an old guy. I've been doing this for over 40 years. When I got into the industry, there was always the idea was you have a reader for 10 years. You know, so you have them from, I don't know, 8 to 18, whatever the window was, I forget. And so then they read the book for that window, and then they move on. And so then what's overlapping is a new generation coming in and reading comics, and then so on and so forth. So they were never too hung up on continuity or these things, because they could literally tell the same story because there's a new audience coming in, or like, you know, like a slightly different version of similar themes and stuff like that. So they could do things like that because there was always people coming in and leaving. What is now that there wasn't in the Lee Kirby days and all that early stuff is that people aren't leaving. So the expectations for that audience is different than a young kid coming in that's reading everything for the first time. So you're kind of like, there's like two different audiences. You know, there's the audience that has been, you know, reading for decades, and then there's the new audience, which there isn't much of a new audience, let's face it, coming in current day, but that was always kind of the idea. So I do think like it's kind of a new-ish phenomenon where there are people like us that have been reading, you know, since we were 6 years old or whatever it is, and we've heard all these stories. You know, we've seen all this stuff, so there's not going to be a lot that's going to impress us, you know, because it's just going to be a variation of the same theme. So I don't even know if that's, I mean, just throwing it out there, playing devil's advocate, I don't even know if that's a good thing, you know, to placate the older audience, well, you know.
I think that they're in a position right now where they recognize that simultaneously they're recognizing that their audience isn't leaving and that they're not getting a new audience. So their marketing department is selling to 50-year-old divorced dads that have nothing better to do to spend their money on than the stuff that they've been spending their money on. So they're able to try to milk them for higher ratios, bigger dollar amount things. But at the same time, they're taking an editorial approach similar to their old one, where they're like, fuck it, we'll just repeat the same story. I mean, the entire new X-Men line is literally Tom Brevoort trying to take every single paradigm of the X-Men from the last 40 years and making one book with each of those and trying to sell them to us like it was a new idea. Every single one is no different from another version that we've already had in the past that were pretty successful before. They're just doing that again, and they're wondering why the people that they're marketing to are being like, yeah, I'm bored. I've seen this. You can't.
Well, it's all the contempt. They have contempt for the older audience too. I mean, they talk some smack, and I think for me that's crossing the line. That's too much.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you have two different departments within the same company working at cross purposes,
right?
And like, either at some point, either the sales and marketing department need to be in charge of how the editorial direction goes, or the editorial department has to go in the direction that overrule the sales and marketing. Somebody has to be in charge there, because you can't have two different big portions of the company directing the company in opposite directions towards different audiences and expect it to work out well. You can't simultaneously scream, fuck you, 50-year-old white guys, from the editorial side, and the marketing side saying, hey, give us $400 for 11 variants of this comic book. You can't do it. I mean, it doesn't work.
The other big problem is a creative problem, and that is, what incentive, how are you going to get good writers to come in with what you're paying? And then what's the incentive for them to gift you their creations? There's a reason that we keep treading water and we keep going back over the same things. It's because there's nobody at Marvel that has any incentive to create anything new. There's no deal like Rob Liefeld got, where he would come in and here's all these characters that I have, and if you want them, you got to give me a piece of it. You got to take care of me. There's none of that anymore, because now Marvel is owned by Disney, and Disney does not do that. You work for the greater glory of the mouse. Anything that you create, we own. Anything that you think of, we own. And you get nothing for it. You'll be lucky if you get a mention in the credits. Maybe we'll send you a ticket to, and when we take your idea and we put it in a movie that makes $1 billion, although the movies aren't making $1 billion anymore. But all those creators that, Ed Brubaker says he gets paid more for the royalties of appearing in Winter Soldier as an extra than he got for being the guy that came up with that story that got made into a movie that made $1 billion.
Yeah, Lin Wein said, oh, what is the character that does all Batman's tech?
Lucius
Allnut, or Lucius Fox, or Howard Allnut.
No,
not that back in the day.
He was in the movies. He's
Lucius.
Lucius Fox. Thank you. And he said he makes more in royalties based on just that character, Lucius Fox, than all the stuff he did at Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. I think Aaron's onto something, and I've said it on my live streams. By the way, I have a YouTube channel. You guys go like and subscribe. And the thing is like how you could reinvent everything. Like they're trying to come up with new storylines. Well, you're just kind of going to rehash the old ones, because that's kind of inevitable. You can only tell so many Spider-Man stories. But if you bring in a new villain, like if you have a villain initiative and you encourage your creatives to come up with new villains, then all of a sudden you can change the hero. Because if this villain is uniquely different, and Spider-Man's never fought a character like that before, then all of a sudden it becomes a new idea. You know what I mean? It becomes a new story, because it has to be, because of this new villain. So the reason Spider-Man was so cool and caught on so fast is every month there was a new villain, right? There was always something going on. And I think, like Aaron says, if we could incentivize, or if they could, Marvel, DC, incentivize the creatives, and what I say is not just the writers, have the pencilers, have the inkers, have the letterers, have the colorists. If you have a good solid pitch it to us for a villain, and then if it passes, we'll have some kind of ownership papers drawn up, and then there'll be a co-ownership moving forward. And they're not going to give you the copyright. That's not going to happen. But what they could do is give you half of the residuals of everything. You know what I mean? That would be a good way to get people to create, and not just give you their sloppy seconds, but give you good stuff. So if Marvel got half the money, you got half the money, and that's not just on the comic books, that's on all the marketing, merchandising, licensing, movies, everything. Then all of a sudden you would change things, and it wouldn't really cost you that much money. It's just kind of like you would still own it flat out, but as far as just money, you would be splitting it. Or even a 60-40 would be way more generous, or God, even a 70-30 would be way more generous than they're doing now, which is nothing really.
Absolutely. It's crazy stuff going on here. We do have the people chiming in. Adam Frey says, if you could only stick with one X book for the next 2 years, is it a post-Krakoa title or Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men? Jim, what do you think?
I'd probably just go with the main X-Men title. I don't mind Peach Momoko's Ultimate as much as others, but I'd probably go with Jed McKay's book as the one I'd stick with.
There we go. Retro Man says, off topic, any obscure characters you guys would like to see stories or have stories in your heads on? Hyperion from Hickman's Avengers and Nighthawk from Aaron's Heroes Reborns are stuck in my head.
Those are good. Those are good characters. Yeah. I don't know.
You got anything, Dylan? You got an obscure hero that you like that you wish you could see more?
I mean, not really too obscure, but not Marvel. Jonah Hex, I always want to see back. I want Jonah Hex back. And speaking of, we were talking about one and done and all that. Like prior to New 52, that's what Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti did. Was they were all like one and done stories, and then like occasionally you'd have like a 6-issue arc. It was great. So
that was the New 52 mandate, and they followed it. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonah Hex, we haven't seen him. He's other than as a robot.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
He was in the
robot, and he had
for a second. Yeah.
And he had the Looney Tunes issue, and that was it. We haven't had like anything since New 52. Sad.
Jim, who's your obscure character?
I don't know. I mean, it's not obscure, but he is because he's not in a lot of. But I really like Animal Man. I'd like to see more of him.
Well, he just got his ass beat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he just got hit by a rock in the back of the head, and that's what he seems. Even with him, even in like Beast World, which you would think he would have been something big, he like got all wonky and had a headache. So I like him, and maybe even something like Firestorm. My stuff is.
I love Firestorm. He'd be mine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like Firestorm a little more.
Firestorm's a great visual. Like he's a good-looking character. Yeah,
he was awesome in Blackest Night.
I also agree with Dylan, though. I'd like Jonah Hex as well.
All right, Sparrow. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna go really obscure. Terror Inc. I want a good Terror Inc. book.
I'm gonna go Dial H for Hero. I don't know.
Cool.
Oh, see, that is see, like we're getting really obscure now. It's gonna be like, you know what?
There's a Dial H for Hero
in
back. Wonder Comics for about 8 issues.
Was there?
That good? Yeah.
Sam Humphries.
Yeah. Ugh. Where's Terror Inc? Is that G.I. Joe? Where are we grabbing that from?
No, Terror Inc. is Marvel.
Okay. Where?
Terror was this character that like he basically. He could take the body parts of other people and put them on himself, and then he would have their abilities. And he was the detective, and he was all rotten looking, and he ended up the last time I think I saw him was he was one of the different colored Deadpools in the Mercs for Money, where they had like Solo and
Frankenstein like character, right?
Yeah, he looked like a ghoul. He looked like the ghoul from Fallout. If you
okay.
There we go. There's some obscure stuff. Cal says, Art is one of Brevoort's parents a rodent. But despite that, he clearly hates Christmas.
I don't know, man. I don't want to get into too personal. But there is something going on with the guy's teeth. So
I think I called him a depressed Buc-ee's logo once.
Rate that 7. I'm all for Kanan not mattering because it makes it easy to retcon, ignore any crappy stories that have damaged the character.
I think that you got to get in there and you got to do the work. You got to retcon that crappy story, and you got to make it make sense. Like when Jeff Johns came in and he had to undo everything that they had done to Hal Jordan that had made Hal Jordan a villain. And he was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I absolve Hal of everything? And he came up with a way to do it. So I think that's what you need to do. Or alternatively, you could just stop hiring crappy writers who write crappy stories. But I know that's difficult. So
Dylan, at your young age, Dylan, are you already a headcanon guy that says, you know what? I'm just going to pretend like that never happened.
Pretty much, I try to do that with a lot, especially with, like, we had Bendis' run on Superman. I try to act like that never happened, except John's a constant reminder that it did happen, so that's a little sad. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like when your Heroes in Crisis mask shows up from Sanctuary, and you're like, why?
yeah,
I wanted to forget this ever happened.
Let me ask you guys a question about continuity and stuff like that. Do you think like that maybe, okay, like I worked on the Superman books. There were 4 titles. There was one editor. There was Mike Carlin that really, really controlled the continuity on everything. So all 4 different teams worked as kind of one. Like everybody knew what each other was doing, all that stuff. So there was continuity. There was you'd build to a story. Like there was a lot of new ideas and things happening on that. But having said that, do you think it's too much to ask to keep that run, like once everybody left and that kind of disband that group of people, do you think it's too much to ask that continuity then is the continuity for 20 more years? Or do you think maybe that continuity should die with that regime, like that group of people that did it, and then just move on to something different? So as far as branding is concerned, make sure, like when I was working on the X-Men, there were like teams, and those teams got to like redo the uniforms and basically kind of put their signature on the book for as long as they were working on it. You know, in the 90s, you know, there was like the Jim Lee, there was the Will Spertaccio, there was Mark Silvestri, there was the Rob Liefeld. That was kind of the 90s. But after that, there's Joe Mad, and there's Chris Pacello, there's like the cartoon kind of stuff that came in. So do you think that maybe you could get a team together, have a clear overview of where you want to be, and then maybe go, we're going to sign you guys on for a 2-year contract. So this book is basically this team's book for 2 years. And so that continuity for that 2 years is going to be buttoned up. It's going to exist within itself. And then after that, a new team's going to come in. And then maybe if you could brand it that way so readers know that this isn't necessarily going to be the continuity for the next 20 years, because that's a lot to ask for a creative person to kind of fulfill that. Do you think maybe that idea could work?
I think here's the
They already do it, kind of.
They kind of already do, but here's the thing. What happened.
It has to matter.
It has to have still, like, okay, if you want to change a costume, you want to tell a new story, you can go in a different direction. Wonderful. I'm great with that. But telling me that the thing I read for 2 years didn't fucking happen, that's an insult. I mean, and that's something that they can't.
If you know it going in, if you know it going in, so there's no betrayal. You know that this is going to be a 2-year run, and then after that, there's going to be a new team that's going to come in.
Then that's free to ignore everything you just did. Then I'm not going to read it.
Ignore everything. I mean, obviously, this is all legacy based, so they're going to have to use some continuity. But I'm just the reason I'm saying is to like diminish expectations, so the reader doesn't have those expectations that this is in stone and it's going to be there for 20 years. Because I do understand if you do think that when that doesn't happen, then it feels like a betrayal. You know what I mean? It feels like that they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain, or they ignored it, or they did whatever. So that what I'm trying to say is that seems like it's always going to be inherently, it's going to go bad. Like, because you can't really fulfill what you're asking or what your expectations are, because it's impossible. You can't really go like 20 years ago and keep that exact continuity, you know, to present day, because things change. And then also, if you're concerned about telling the same stories, then you would probably be telling the same stories because you wouldn't want to break canon.
Well,
I think for the most part, people have that expectation that when someone comes onto a character, or an artist comes onto a character, that they're going to have their stamp and what they're going to do with the character and what their vision of where they should go, but they're the same age as they should be within the continuity. And the things that have happened in the past have happened in the past, whether they're relevant to this story or not. And that in 5 years, likely, Spider-Man will be going in a different direction, focusing on something different about him. I think it's when you're looking at Spectacular Spider-Man that's supposed to be, I think, in continuity, and Peter Parker looks like he's 19, and Miles Morales is like 17 or something like that, and you're going, how does this happen? I think it's when that kind of continuity that ends up being really jarring, or it just goes totally against the history of the character.
Yeah, when you get to the point where, okay, say I went to the store today and then I went on an adventure and I wrecked my car, and okay, now somebody else is writing my story, but my car's fine now. No, sorry, it wrecked. You have to deal with that. Now you can have me fight with my insurance company for a little while and buy a new car or buy the same car, but you have to.
No, but it only matters if you're a Knight Rider. Yeah, and the car is an important aspect of the character.
No, I understand, but like if you blow up Wayne Manor and wreck the Batmobile, and that's how you leave the story, and then somebody else comes on to pick it up, and the Wayne Manor's perfectly fine, and the Batmobile's sitting in the cave, and they don't address how you got from point A to point B.
Well, what I would do editorially is I would say, if you do something like that, you have to resolve that within your run. So then you basically leave it the same place that you started. So it's a run, and then it's just kind of like a series of like 2 years worth of stories, and then Wayne Manor's back intact, and it's kind of like, what is it? Construction, deconstruction. So you can deconstruct it and then kind of build it back to where it was before you deconstructed it, and then the next team gets to come in and put their stamp on it.
And that's even fine too. But then if you tell me that this is the first time, then the next time Wayne Manor gets destroyed, and you act like it's never happened before, well, then I'm just going to say you're an idiot or a liar. And that's the point. It's not an issue of where they go in the future. For me, it's an issue of pretending like the things that happened in the comics didn't happen. As long as they recognize that those things happen, whether they matter or not for the future, is kind of that's a whole other story. Like, okay, you want to put it in new costumes, wonderful. You want to even tell kind of the same story with a new twist, that's cool. I mean, it happens, but as long as they're not trying to convince us that the fact that it's the same story, as long as they're not trying to convince me that it's a new story when it's just the same.
You can tell the same story, and it can actually address one of the problems that Art is bringing up, is like, 20 years from now, are you still bound to that continuity? If that continuity is something that, you're like, well, I kind of want to like tell that story, but I don't want to be mired, or I don't want to be like chained to the exact way that it was told. You can retell that story and you can reframe it. You can have a different context. You can tell it from a different perspective, and you can kind of change the way that the readers feel about it and update it and kind of like bring it into the more current continuity. And that way you get the best of both worlds.
Or just at least acknowledge, hey man, I feel like I've already done this. Like, if you're in the same position as you were before, okay,
simmer down,
cool.
Doc. We got another question. Hello all, this is Dylan Lindsay. Do you think that Tom is only saying this because he has no faith in the current writing room, or is this a Disney decision?
I have no idea. I have been out of that room for decades.
Marvel, and looking back on it and being like, yeah, that was too much work. I don't want to have to do it anymore.
I don't think Disney pays any attention to Marvel, honestly.
No. Yeah.
It's just a line. It's just a line on a financial report. That's all that it is to them.
It's a tax deduction.
It certainly makes his job easier if you don't care about canon and continuity.
And
that's what all these guys want. Your Jim Lees, your Tom Brevoorts. They just want it easy, man. They're just riding out till they get that parachute. Just run out the clock on a career, man. You don't have to care anymore.
Run out the clock.
They've all taken a knee and are just like watching the clock tick down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Watching everything burn around them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they don't care. It's not going like by the time they're looking at it going, well, I mean, at the current rate of collapse, we got X number of years, and that's a couple more than I have before I reach retirement age. So why in the hell should I waste my time trying to care? It's not going to affect me.
Galb says, calling CB a weasel is too good for that glutton. There you go.
I've never seen a weasel that
Okay,
fat.
he's an effing weasel. How about that? I added an F into it.
He's a crap weasel. We'll just create a
what
new
Doc
term for him.
said, most creators only have one story. They want to write about their gender and their fetishes. That is most creators. I think it's, for some reason, the people that Marvel and DC are hiring, but there's plenty of stuff on the indie scene that doesn't get into any of that shit.
Well,
there's actually plenty of stuff at Marvel and DC that don't either.
And oh, okay, and let's be perfectly honest about it. The people that do have that one story that they just want to write about their gender and their fetishes, and there are a handful of them, it's because that is their entire personality. They don't have another thought in their head, like at all, ever. It's just about that thing. And okay, what I don't understand why we're still hiring them. But
well, I heard there's a study about like boys and girls. Like boys can suspend the disbelief and they can become the character. Like they can read Batman and they can kind of
Lego.
Girls kind of want to change things to serve their purpose, or like they change. Like you always hear, like they get into a relationship with a guy, like the first thing they want to do is change the guy, like, so that's kind of like a female trait. So I think like these, like what we're talking about, like these fetishes, and I think that's kind of more of like a feminine trait. Like it's people that want to kind of do what women do versus like what a guy does, where traditionally you go in there, you want to tell good Batman stories, you want to tell good kick-ass Fantastic Four stories, because that's where you're at. You can become that character, you can go on that journey. Women have a little bit of a harder time doing that. It's that Lego study or whatever. So I don't know how accurate, but it's just, I thought it would be interesting to mention it. Just maybe that's what's going on there.
Well, I can tell you what the study actually showed. The study showed that when you give a boy a toy, by and large, he will want to learn everything about that character so that he knows how to play with it. And, he wants to be Batman. He wants that figure to be He-Man, so he needs to know what it is, what are the things around this character so that I can inhabit this character. Whereas the girls tended to want characters that were more of a blank slate because they wanted to project themselves into the character. They want the character to be them. So I think that you do see a lot of that in the writing as they've brought more and more female writers in. Now, of course, everything's not a hard and fast rule. We've had really great writers in the industry before that are women that understand the characters and that want to write that way. But by and large, that's kind of like the psychological difference that the Lego study.
It's a general versus like a specific. There's always going to be women that are into action adventure. I married my wife because we were reminiscent about the Three Stooges. I mean, any woman that could love the Stooges, is worthy.
That's a rare find. That is a rare find.
It is a rare find. Yeah.
Wraith X7 says canon not mattering also makes it easier to fix characters and restore them to who they were before they were broken or changed. So, Dill, this is where I take umbrage with that idea or concept. What Tom King did to Wally West needed to be addressed and fixed before you could see Wally West back to being who Wally West is again. You can't just ignore and act like Heroes in Crisis didn't happen. Otherwise, you're insulting my intelligence, and it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Well, I think Aaron pointed out, like Jeff Johns on the Green Lantern stuff. Like, you talk about taking a character and then basically resurrecting them and rebuilding them to something that people enjoy reading and going on those adventures, so it can be done.
Yeah, they retconned Heroes in Crisis like 4 different times. You had several different writers that came. Basically, everyone that's written Wally West since is coming and being like, listen, it wasn't really Wally. Like, this is what happened. This is how it goes. He wasn't in his right mind because in Heroes in Crisis, it was weird. He got stressed out and exploded and killed a bunch of people, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So you had a lot of people come in and retcon it since, like Aaron was talking about earlier, where he's like, you can't just ignore it. You got to do the work to retcon it. I 100% agree with that. And that's what we've seen with Wally, because Wally, it looked like Wally had a really weird thing where he came back with Rebirth. It's like, yes, he's finally back, because in movie 2 he got replaced. It's like, Wally's finally back. Everything's great with Wally. You had the Titans book, and then Heroes in Crisis came in. They just torpedoed his characters. Like, oh no, how much longer is Wally going to suffer again? And then luckily we had Flash Forward and a bunch of other things happen. And now he's back to being an interesting character again and not completely ruined. So you can salvage these characters. It's just you got to do the work.
And just
Yeah,
to go back to generalities in the Lego story, you know, you guys have just proven it. Tom King is the most feminine writer in the industry. More than any woman, he wants every character to be him. He wants every character to be depressed. He wants every character to be saved by his mommy wife. You know, it's all of his issues on display with every single book that he takes on. He has no other idea except how to write himself. So when he takes on a character, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to be writing Wonder Woman, what kind of cool Wonder Woman stories can I tell? Can I look at Wonder Woman's continuity and really build something out? Instead, he says, how can I tell my story using Wonder Woman?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And anytime you're telling your story, you're narrowing your market, you know, because there may be people that are like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but as a general, you're not really connecting with the masses. Like you have to tell stories that are going to connect in some humanistic way to your audience, and if it's just connecting to you or your, you know, core group of people that think the same way you do, then you're definitely minimizing your sales and your range of who you're going to attract.
And that's part of the thing where it seems like recently or not recently that they assign books, and then, you know, a person will get a book, not really care about Wonder Woman, and say, oh, I had this story I was thinking of before, and then kind of shove it in, you know, to Wonder Woman and stuff like that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Shove it in to Wonder Woman. Get it in there.
We can always count on Jim.
Yeah. Go hard.
Federico de la Casa, Doc, that's why Marvel Comics Presents lasted that long. It had 2 good long runs, and the rest was trying new talents. Marvel fanfare was cheap for that time.
Yeah. I mean, look, back in the day, some anthologies did work. You had Marvel Comics Presents that lasted for a while, but you also had like Marvel Premiere.
Well, lots of anthologies work. That's where Flash came from. That's where Iron Man came from. That's where Thor came from.
I understand, but that was when anthologies
they didn't have the characters yet.
Yes. Yeah. When anthologies were the industry, at least at Marvel.
You know, I always thought if I was the editor of an anthology, it would be a dream job, because like anthologies are just one and done. So they're just stories, like self-contained stories. And so you could get the best of the best, right? Because if you could budget it, which companies don't budget for this stuff anymore, but you could get like slower artists like Art Adams, or you could get Travis
Smith.
You could get like all of these guys. You could bring like Barry Smith in. You could have I don't know, Walt Simonson do a one and done, you know, and then let them take their time. They could write it, they could draw it, they could, you know, put the whole thing together, almost like a create your own kind of thing, and then just publish it when it's done. So if you had a bunch of people doing this, then this anthology is just going to be the cream of the crop. You know what I mean? Like, it's every one of these stories is going to be badass. Remember the Batman Black and White? That was some good shit, man. There was some good story. There was some kind of punky shit in there too, but most of it was really good stuff.
Alan Moore did something like that recently called Cinema Purgatorio, which he had the main story, but then there was like 3 backups by really awesome people that you didn't see very often. Yeah, in an anthology book that will. Well, I don't think a lot of people read it, but if you checked it out, it's pretty superb.
Yeah, I do agree that there is. It's kind of a hard sell. But for me, as a comic book buying, you know, when I was a kid and even as an adult, anthologies are awesome. Like, I don't necessarily need that continuity. I kind of like just one and done stories, even if it's not like a superhero type of thing, you know.
I'm just saying that for the most part, they're not terribly successful. Now, whether or not they should be,
we got it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
And the only other problem is for every Marvel Comics Presents that there's like another dozen anthologies that they did that didn't work.
You can say about most things.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Dill Lindsay says continuity is important. ASM 33 doesn't hit the same without it. So many moments wouldn't have the same impact without the stories that come before it. Now, he's got a point there, Dylan. But also, without continuity, maybe what Brian Michael Bendis did in his Superman run wouldn't have been so egregious.
Yeah, but also, if you paid attention to how Bendis' career was going prior to that, you never would have hired him and put him on Superman. So there's,
There.
you can use your brain every once in a while and figure these things out. But yeah, like obviously, there's always been a mix and match. So we've had continuity, and then there are always books that are out of continuity. Like DC was trying to do that with Black Label, but like this is gonna be our fun, like out of continuity stuff. So if you want that, you go Black Label. If you want what's in continuity, then you got this, that, and the other. And so you can always do that. But yeah, continuity, like it makes things hit harder. It makes you care more about things. But it's not the end all be all. You can have your out of continuity stuff. But I think what Brevoort's been saying with just being lazy here is not the way to do it. Just be like, just don't really pay attention. Just ignore it so I don't have to do my job. I don't think that's the answer.
That's the thing, Jim. So, like, the best things Marvel are doing right now really are out of continuity or in continuity 30 years ago. And it's much harder to get excited. And I like Wolverine Deep Cup and Wolverine Madripoor Knights and Symbiote Spider-Man and Maestro and all that kind of stuff. But it's far less impactful and harder to get excited for that because it ultimately doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. And then when you read it, you just get depressed because it is so much better than what you're reading currently. And then you're just like, I don't get it. And I don't know, but that is some of the better stuff at Marvel right now. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know what Tom Brevoort is, if he thinks that it's bad because of continuity. And like everybody was saying, like getting tied down by continuity. Well, if you make it work, that takes good writers, and I just don't think there's good writers. I think he's looking past that and trying to make it easier for these not so good writers.
He doesn't want to do his job.
Right. I think I just want to really hammer this point. It's easier. It's easier to work with these writers. I think that just hit the nail right on the head. That's a good observation.
Well, he also put in that comment that it's just going to start an argument. You've been a creator for a while. Everybody but here's been reading comic books for a while. Continuity arguments between fans is the bedrock of the freaking entire fandom. I want something to argue about. I want to prove Doc is wrong. It's fun.
You never do it, but you can't tell me it's fun.
Trying.
I think it's all good. It's just like how far are you willing to take it? When people start really calling names and having hissy fits and canceling each other and that kind of stuff, that does take the fun of it. But yeah, it
doesn't happen over continuity. That's for characterization.
That's for characterization.
Like,
who would beat who in a fight? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, those are fun. That's
I think that's the key. Make it fun. Also, I think quality will always speak for itself. So if it's a one and done, if it's beholden to continuity, whatever it is, as long as it's done well and connects with an audience, that's really what you're looking for. So like hard, fast rules, I think, like continuity has its pros and cons, one and dones have its pros and cons. All those things, some people are going to like it. Some people aren't going to like it. So those things are always going to exist. But if you have a writer that really can connect with an audience, that's the key. Or an artist that really is, manages to put images down that people really respond to. This is really the key, is they get better quality. I always thought like it really isn't, like a lot of that stuff is more superficial, but if you could get a really good team on a book, I think it will transcend a lot of sin. It'll make you look the other way. Because I've read a lot of books that were just like drawn very, very well and enjoyed the hell out of them,
Absolutely. Rate that 7. The best way to do one and done storylines with subplots is the way DeFalco told stories in Spider-Girl and other MC2 line of comics.
Well, we also see what happened to the MC2 line.
DeFalco does not get enough credit for
he doesn't.
He did while he was at Marvel. A lot of things that are contributed to Shooter are things that Tom DeFalco actually instituted. So I think that and Tom also was part of Marvel when they had the initiative where they wanted you to create new characters, and there were incentives for you to create new characters, and it was a boom period as far as like getting new characters introduced into the books because the creators had incentive to do so. And Tom himself,
Tom knew when to be part of things and when to just back off, because a good editor, a good person that's overseeing can see what's working, what's not working, and not necessarily just mandate based on like, this is what I want, this is what we're going to do. And I think Tom was one of those guys that was able to see what was working, what wasn't, and kind of adjust accordingly. So yeah, he is kind of an underrated guy. I agree.
Absolutely. Carlitos Figueroa, continuity is important. Story needs to revolve around the character, not the other way around. I think this is a really good point here, Aaron. I was going to mention this earlier, is I think when you create the confines of the history of the character, what they can do, what they're motivated by, it makes the writer make a story that fits the character rather than make the character fit their story. And that's always going to be more impactful.
It tells you as the writer what your character is going to do in a given situation. So if you're a really good writer, or if you're somebody that pays attention to the characterization of characters, when you write a storyline, you go, okay, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And then you start to flesh it out and you go, well, it can't happen this way because the way that I've imagined it, the character would never do that. So how do I either create the scenario that forces the character into that box while still maintaining that character's personality and continuity and, you know, moral code, or how does the character change the story? Does the story now change? And I've had that happen in writing scripts where it's like, I was writing a script that I thought this is the story that I'm telling. And then the more I brought in this character, the more the story changed because the character molds the story. And that's always a really exciting thing. You know, that's always, you know, really fun when you get into that space and you kind of get over yourself and the initial idea that you had and you let things evolve and, you know, you end up with a much richer narrative and something that's more satisfying to the reader that is invested in this character.
Yeah, and you can take like say Batman and Spider-Man, and you can tell exactly the same story. Like you could have the same plot, tell this story, but the difference is going to be the character, how the character reacts to the story. So the character will dictate, you know, how the story unfolds. But it could be the same beginning, middle, end, but the character will always dictate, if you're writing it correctly, how it happens. You know, like Batman will react completely different than Spider-Man would.
And I just think that character work is something that the current writers are really poor with. That instead of developing the character through the story, they just end up like somebody says they're great, or you have just like they'll kick a dog so they're bad, or they just don't really have that knack for because if you have, you know, a good character and it develop, you're going to follow that character through the ups and downs. That's the basis of it. But most of these writers just want to tell their one story and then it just falls apart.
Well, and that's also what delineates one character from another. Like, because there are like stories, there are plots, there are things that there's only so many stories to be told. But the difference in how the character reacts to the story, or a combination of characters reacting to the same situation, is what makes it what it is. So that's why Spider-Man, it's not just the powers, the superficial powers that he has versus Batman. That's part of it. But also they're completely different characters. They would react in the same situation differently. That's one of the things that these team books are really lacking, because there would not be agreement amongst, like, if it's a team among the group. So one of the interesting things would always be they respect each other, but they would bicker on how they would go about doing it, you know, because each one has a different point of view.
And if someone were to react in a way contrary to their established personality, the expectation on the writer would be to address that. And why? But most modern writers just they're like, well, that's what had to happen.
It's an interesting point, Doc, because that's one of the things that you know, shameless plug here, but that's one of the things with Black and White book 3 that we're seeing is you know, the story that Art has kind of laid out and the pressure that he wants to put on the characters. You're going to see a different side of Reed. You're going to see a different side of Whitney. And initially, if you've read the first 2 books, they may seem to be acting out of character, but It's the stresses that are being put on them and that are kind of like changing the way that they're reacting to it. So, you know, that's one of the things that as a writer, like as a reader, you might find that jarring, but it's up to Art and I to kind of make you realize why the character is still within the parameters of who they are. But these outside factors are making them act in a way that's somewhat contrary to their normal persona.
Yeah, and like Art said about like team books, that's what made, say, a JLI by Giffen and DeMatteis so good, because they had all those crazy personalities and they didn't get along, and you played that up, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, conflict is always an interesting aspect. You know, it gives you something to write. If everybody's getting along, it kind of becomes boring.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dill, do you think that maybe DC Comics did a good enough job explaining why Superman decided to renounce his U.S. citizenship?
No, they kind of just threw that in there and like action. Yeah, an Action Comics.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Completely.
I mean, I
against
think
everything the character stands for.
Well, because that wasn't Superman, that was the writer.
Yes.
And that's the problem. That when the writer decides that they're going to project,
They break
their
the character
beliefs
over
and their-
themselves rather than craft the story to the character.
And also, it's bad editorial, and it you know, like how could you okay something like that? You know, I have a theory, like a lot of the stuff is done, it's mandated on high. I don't think even the editors have the control that we think they do. I think a lot of this stuff is just being okayed, you know, by the higher ups, to inject, you know, politics, to inject, you know, agenda. You know, mostly it seems like it's you know, left-wing agenda versus, you know, any type of trying to be fair or middle of the road kind of you know, ideas. It's kind of leaning definitely towards one side. And I think this is why I think it's the most retarded, stupid ideas, because you're always going to isolate half your audience.
Yeah.
It's like who in their right mind would even kind of concoct an idea like that? Okay, well, let's do this. Well, we're going to get some ESG money. Yeah, but at the same time, you're destroying your character, you're destroying your universe, you're destroying everything that this thing, you know, stood for. You know.
Yeah, that's why people used to say you don't talk about politics and religion, and now it's like they have to, and they're going to, and shove it at you. It's weird.
Yeah.
But
Because leftism has become a religion. You know, it's the fact of the matter is that everybody has a religion. Everybody has something that they worship, whether it's themselves, whether it's politics. You know, there is a void in us as human beings that we have to fill with something. And that's what you're seeing politics become the new religion of the left.
All right. Well, Federico de la Casa, I bought tons of comics, many bad because they were continuity related. If you leave continuity out, I check out buy. Editors don't know their continuity.
I think that's the thing.
Yep.
Most readers are there. We stick around through bad because we hope somebody makes something good out of it later, using that continuity. Otherwise, we're out the first time it turns bad, and then we might check in later if we remember.
Yeah. And then you have people that are like running DC, that Diane Nielsen, like she openly said that she doesn't read comic books. You're overseeing a comic book company. Like, you don't.
I think a lot of editors are like that too. And instead of having, say, a Denny O'Neil like as the group Batman editor, you just have somebody who's just there and didn't even have a background in writing or comics themselves. I think it's just a job.
Well, that was my second run of Darkwing that James Silvani and I did. The first time through Boom, you know, when we were working on the Disney comics, we had Jesse Post, who was an avid comic reader and an avid Disney, you know, comic reader. And so he knew all of these conventions that we were playing with. And the second time when we were doing Under Joe Books, I mean, you know, she was trying, God bless her, but you know, the person that we were dealing with for approvals didn't read comic books. She had come from like a gardening magazine, I believe, and she had just been hired because, oh, you have publishing experience on your resume. Now oversee these comic books and oversee these properties that you know nothing about. So a lot of times we would get notes, and I would have to go back and I would have to correct them. They'd say, oh, you can't do this because thus and so, and I'd be like, well, this is building off of this from the show. Here's the episode. Here's the moment. This is what we're doing. They did it in the show. Greg Weisman famously got notes when he was at Slave Labor Graphics on Hudson's accent, and the approval person telling him, oh, Hudson doesn't talk like this. And he's like, well, Hudson does talk like this. He talked to the Scottish brogue, and I know because I created Hudson. and I ran the show.
Yeah.
Eric O'Sullivan, we got the salt in the soup himself. I keep coming back to the Robins. Aging them up really clutters everything, in my honest opinion. Would part of the solution be to take the Archie or Simpsons approach with evergreen iconic characters? Thanks all.
I think it doesn't help, because now you're just, all you do is you keep stuffing characters in. You look at how many different classes of mutants are there at this point? You got the original team, you got the international team, you got the New Mutants, you got the Gen X, you got the Young X-Men, you got the other New Mutants. You got the Wolverine and the X-Men, Jean Grey school class. You got a bunch of other classes too. And this is over what? A couple of years now? Like, you can't do it. You either get stuck with everything being mashed together, or you do the evergreen, in which case you're not creating new characters. When's the last time a new character got introduced to The Simpsons?
I haven't watched The Simpsons in over 30 years.
Well, I think you could bring new characters in, but the thing is, like, it's a time issue. So you're just not moving time. So it's like time stands still. So if Robin is, 15, then he's always 15. If Batman's, in his late 20s, and he's always in his late 20s. And then you just keep telling stories like that. One thing that I think DC has done, to their credit, is I think they handle some of their legacy stuff pretty well. I don't like Robin. I just want to say I like Batman without Robin. Always personally, I thought, like, I'm kind of like Stanley. I think sidekicks and stuff are kind of dumb ideas. But if you're going to use the sidekick idea, I understand that from a marketing standpoint too. It's like, it's the kids' gateway. It's like, oh, they can go on adventures with Batman if they're, Robin or whatever it is, But the thing is after a while, just like I'm saying, like, people that never stop reading comic books, then are all of a sudden, it's like, Robin is still 10, or Robin is still 15. Like, nothing's changed. And then your expectations start going in, like, well, maybe Robin should be aged up. And I think like DC did it pretty well, where you had Dick Grayson, and then he aged up, and then he became like his own character, Nightwing. So he transcended the Robin, thing, and then so on and so forth. And I kind of like the idea that Batman was this kind of lone wolf character and never really had a family or necessarily pursued a family. And then, because of the way the continuity and the timelines are working, he ends up getting saddled with a family. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a lot of mouths to look after. Well, not necessarily feed, but he's got a lot of, Bat family to take care of. Let's just put it that way. And I think, like, those aren't my favorite type of Batman stories, but I do understand how that, as far as a legacy, it is a fairly good problem solve from my point of view. The Robins, I think they handled it fairly decent. Even the Damian thing I thought was an interesting idea, where it's finally an heir to the Batman mythology or Batman world that is actually flesh and blood. And then how would the other characters, especially Dick Grayson, react? Because he was always the guy. Now there's a blood heir to the Wayne fortunes and all that other stuff. Those are the ideas I would write. Like, how do these guys really get along or not get along? All that kind of stuff. So I think it can work, but the majority of the time it's just kind of a bad idea to have young sidekicks.
Trouble Magnet, Fantastic Four continuity ended with number 322. See the Great American Novel. The Clone Team was the end of continuity.
For me, the Fantastic Four ended at the end of Secret Wars, where you had that great Hickman confrontation between Doom and Reed. I thought that he boiled down their relationship perfectly. And it's when Doom says, "Admit it, Richards, you've always thought you were better than me." And Reed says, "I've never thought that." but I've always thought you could be better than what you are.
Ooh, that's
That's
good.
a sick burn.
And Doom loses it. Doom absolutely loses it, as you would expect. But I thought that was the perfect distillation of that relationship.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I don't know, Dylan, is that as good as when Lex Luthor said, "Because of you, Superman, I won't help anybody"? Then he cured his sister's cancer just to prove he could do it, and then gave it back to her.
Gave back to her,
Just to
yeah.
prove he
to
was still an
Superboy.
asshole.
I love that so much. Yeah, because he's like, you talked about how if I was gone, you could do anything. Well, here you go. And then he had Superboy gather everything, all the ingredients, make it. He did it, and then put her straight back to her like comatose state. That was amazing. That showed how evil Lex is. But now he's a good guy again. But
it shows how much he
that
hates
moment was
Superman.
fantastic.
Just the contempt that he has.
Spikes.
Like,
Well, he doesn't
And
just
that
have
he could do
contempt
what
for
he said.
Superman. He has contempt for the whole world. Like if he could come up with a cure for cancer,
Because they looked to Superman and not him.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying he's still a bad guy. Like
Jealousy. Oh,
like
it's terrible.
he doesn't just hate Superman. He hates everybody.
because they admire Superman. Yeah, exactly, Wes, instead of him. Like, that admiration is rightfully mine. It's the same motivation as Doom. This world is rightfully mine. I am the person that should be in control of everything because I am the best possible person, and you are all fools for not recognizing it. Isn't that the megalomaniacal villain, credo is like, I despise all of you because you do not recognize my greatness.
And it was so great because it
Having
showed
said
like
that- oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
it showed that Lex wasn't all talk because Superboy called him out because he was just like, you talk about all these great things you do if Superman wasn't around. Well, your own family is suffering and you're doing nothing about it. He's like, oh, I can do this. And then he did it and then put her straight back. Just like, see, I'm not just all talk about this. Like, I can do it. It's your fault that
what
my
an
sister
asshole.
suffers. It's your fault that people all around the world suffer from all this.
That's what we're missing is this great villains being awful.
Yeah. Now I hate Lex Luthor all over again.
Exactly.
But now he's a family man.
Everybody's got to be redeemed now because Magneto.
But we live in more of a gray area, because we got to understand what motivates a villain, and we got to sympathize with them. It's like we can understand, but we can still condemn. We can go, oh, this is the reason you did all these things, but you're still a bad person, and you can't be amongst society. You have to, go behind bars or be put to death or whatever the hell the punishment is.
Yeah, it's like, look, I understand how you got here, but I don't condone it and I don't approve of it, and it is wrong. There is still right and wrong. We can understand why you went wrong, but you went wrong.
One of my favorite things, it's not really talked about too much, is Dark Knight Returns. It's I think it's the Two-Face stuff where there's that shrink that's talking about like that he cured Harvey Dent, of his syndrome and whatever. And so he's out there bragging about it and stuff like that. And then Harvey Dent ends up being Harvey, Two-Face again and doing this thing. And I think he kills that shrink or whatever, if I remember right. And it's just like, there is kind of like this arrogance in like, I don't know, in healthcare and mental health care and stuff like that. They can cure somebody. It's like, like pedophiles, certain types, you can't fix them. They are like broken and they will always be broken. And so I like that idea of like Lex is always Lex. He's always broken,
Just speaking of the psychologist, that's the thing with the Joker too. That whole Dr. Walper subplot is him, coddling the Joker and like, you're really the victim here. You're really the, you're really
that's
the
what
one
it was.
that, you're a victim of Batman's psychosis. And then when they're on the talk show and the David Letterman stand-in starts ragging on the Joker, and then he's like, I won't let you talk to him this way. He's a sensitive human being, and Joker's just like, shut up, I'm gonna kill everybody in this room. And then he does.
And then they laugh, right? And because they don't take it seriously, and then he does.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, that's darn rude.
Story. Yeah, that's the character, I think. But what was Two-Face like? Was Two-Face actually cured? Was that like?
No, they fixed his face. Like they restored the plastic surgery. They restored his face, but they have that moment where he's taking the hostages and he tells Batman, look at me, really look at me, and Batman says, I see him for what he really is, and both sides are scarred.
That's what it was, yeah,
because it's psychological, yeah. So it's one of those story elements that's really really good, and it's why that book has just stayed the perennial bestseller that it has is because
there are people that
deeper things.
They ask these questions, you know, can you redeem these characters, you know? And my thing is like, no. You know, you can't. And then there are people like, well, should we put them to death? Like, I know this is all pretend, you know, the Joker and stuff like that. And it's like, well, they built in that the Batman doesn't kill, you know. So I think you could get James Gordon to kill him, or like one of the, you know, if you're going to do that storyline. But ultimately, I don't think Batman is.
That's a storyline right there. Batman doesn't kill. Gotham does. Put him in execution.
They did that. Chuck Dixon did that. He did a story where Joker was on death row for a crime he didn't commit.
Yeah, that would be the plan.
And Batman had the moral implication.
Batman
had the moral problem of, do I give him the lifetime achievement award and let him be executed, or do I, you know, prove that he didn't commit this crime that he's accused of that they're going to execute him for?
They also
really
killed him.
Quandary.
They did it in the Silver Age where he went on trial and got executed, but he had like a serum to bring himself back. So he's like, I served my sentence. I'm fine. Then he went around and just was like, I'm good. And Batman and Robin watched him for like days. He's like, he's going to slip up. And then he eventually did. But it was hilarious. His idea was to get caught, die, and then be like, I served my sentence. You can't do anything to me. It worked for a little bit.
I beat the system. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't, no double jeopardy, man. You put him to death. What are you going to do?
You just wait until he does
Kalitioki
something
says,
else.
you could tell Jim Lee isn't a businessman. If he had an actual healthy company, he would make 2 or 3 times more, maybe even more on salary than what he's trying to charge for his pieces. To make money, you have to work. He makes way more than he's paying for those, being paid for those pieces. He's making like 7 figures.
Yeah.
I have an insight on Jim Lee, and I'm fairly convinced of this. And Jim is a good guy. He always did right by me, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm dumping on the guy. But I think Jim Lee is a Jim Lee guy. He's not a company guy. Like, he looks after his own self-interest. And there are people that would argue that that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you come into a company like that, I think you have to be very generous. I think Dick Giordano was a very generous guy. Like that whole year Dark Knight Returns, from what I understand, that was Dick's idea. But Dick knew he wasn't the guy to execute, you know, a retired Batman, you know. So he gave that idea to Frank Miller and let Frank Miller run with it. So I think that, you know, to run like a company, especially like a DC Marvel, because there's so many different characters and there's so much stuff going on, that it can't really be about you anymore. It has to be about the company. It has to be about the characters and all this stuff. And I think that Jim Lee inherently, people profit and do well around him, his circle, but I think it's mostly like he's good at taking care of Jim Lee, because if you look at like everything, it didn't necessarily benefit, like a lot of the things that he's done in the past haven't benefited like Wildstorm, or it hasn't benefited certain aspects, but it always benefits him, you know. Even like something like a presidency, like with Dan DiDio, like I kind of saw that early on, like Dan's going to be the fall guy, you know. So you set up a, you know, like in a corporate structure, you set up somebody that can take the fall. When he brought in Bob Harris to be editor-in-chief, I was also like, Bob's going to take the fall, you know. So you set up like a series of pawns that you can kind of knock off, you know, to get to you. And so he's pretty good at taking care of himself, and that's, you know, that's Jim's thing. Whatever, I'm not going to really judge it, you know, good or bad, but you know, Bob Harris didn't wait for the axe to fall. He actually quit because I think he saw the writing on the wall, what Jim was going to do, the sacrificial lambs kind of thing. And if you look at it, Last Man Standing, even Diane Nielsen's gone, like Last Man Standing is Jim. And so Jim is really good at taking care of Jim.
Bobby Chase took the call too. Another well-respected pro in comic books.
As a concept, I understand that, because companies do not take care of you. You know, when I worked for Boom, I was very much aware of the fact that, You know, they would cut my legs out from under me as soon as it was convenient for them to do so. You know, the leadership there, as much as they talked about, we're a family and blah, blah, blah. You know, corporations love to tell you that. Companies love to tell you that. They love to tell you that we're a family when they need you to work extra hours. We're a family. We all pull together. But like if you need a sick day or, you know, you got a personal thing going on, all of a sudden we're not so much of a family anymore because you're inconveniencing the company. So I understand looking out for yourself. But what I also understand is that, you know, while I was at Boom and while I knew that the company did not have my back, I had the back of all the people that worked for me and that worked with me. I was trying to do well, not because I wanted to serve the greater glory of Boom, which is what they wanted. What I wanted to do is I wanted the line to be profitable so that everybody that was working on the line that was passionate about it could continue to make a living. That's where my loyalty was. So I think that that's the big disconnect with Jim, is that he can be about Jim, but he also has a responsibility to be about the people that are underneath him, the health of the company, so that people can continue to make a living. That's where it's bigger than you. I'm fine with you not being loyal to the corporate structure that will stab you in the back at the first opportunity that they need a fall guy. You know, you will be that sacrificial lamb when they need you to. But the people that work for you, those are the people you need to look out for.
Yeah, and that's the entire company, pretty much.
Daredevil 1985. Hi, everyone. I have a question for Art. I was wondering if he has any memories of the shelved Nightwing miniseries he was going to do in the early 90s.
I could do a whole show on it. And I'll try to tell the part that ties into what we're talking about. So we were talking about like a stewardship, you know, overseeing a franchise or an IP. So at DC Comics, there was like the great editor, you know, Mike Harlan, and there was also John Peterson. And John Peterson was still a good friend of mine, and he was overseeing the Teen Titans. And so what he was doing is he understood that you need to get good talent on the books, because I was on the X books, so he saw all that going on and everything. And so he was like, you get top talent, you give them like leeway to create, change costumes, you know, do stuff. It can build success. And so that's what he was doing. He got Kevin McGuire in. He had the old guard too. He had Marv Wolfman, who was still writing the Titans at the time. He had Lynn Wein coming in. He had Louise Simonson coming in. So he had like some cool old guard, you know, coming in to write the stuff. But he was bringing in new artists. So he wanted me to pencil, ink, and write this Nightwing miniseries. And so just to get to like the point that we were talking about, so I don't go through every aspect to get there, I ended up leaving from doing that series, even though it was all written. There were pages drawn and stuff like that, because they fired John Peterson for whatever reasons. They fired him, and they brought in, I think it was like Aaron was saying, or maybe it was Wes. They brought like a corporate guy from Warner Publishing, like, I don't know, novels or something like that, and he took John's place. The guy knew nothing about comic books, nothing. And so there was all kinds of agreed upon stuff that I had with the editor, which was John Peterson, that DC and this editor would not stand behind. So they pulled the rug out from under me, but still wanted me to do the series without all the bells and whistles and the way that John and I had designed this thing to become the hit. And so that's kind of what happened. Is John was fired, and I was loyal to John. It was apparent that this new guy was going to he wasn't going to be able to do what John was going to be able to do. So I just left and did Cable. So it was Nightwing or Cable, and so I went over and I drew and worked with Fabian Nicias on Cable. So that's kind of the long and short, tying in into kind of what we're doing. But like I said, I could tell a whole story about it. It was
Maybe
a great.
we could do that one day.
It was
Art,
a great
let me ask you
story.
something. Since you brought up your run on Cable, I've always been dying to ask this, and I always forget. Did you come up with Cable's haircut for that first storyline?
Yeah, I have to say it was kind of what was Sean Connery? What was that movie? I want to say Medicine Man or something. Like Sean Connery had some kind of like ponytail and some kind of shaved sides or something like that. And I was like, you know, yeah, he looks pretty cool. I'll do it too, you know. I'm not
I
taking
always
all
remember that. It was
responsibility.
so super striking.
Yeah, I'm not going to take full responsibility. Marvel signed off on it.
He had the goatee, he had the haircut. It was letting you know this is a Cable's doing a different thing in a different time.
Yeah. I thought it was cool at the time, but it was the '90s and things. People took chances back then, and I thought it was cool for the time.
Nothing.
Kalichioki says, we need to stop making things easy. That's how we got into this mess with DEI. If you can't work within continuity, you shouldn't be a creative. Constraints fuel creativity in all forms of art. Yeah. So as somebody that's been in the industry, I know you've been out for a little while now. How much is ESG and DEI really dictating all this stuff? Everyone's got a theory, but I've never had anyone really on the inside. Like, is this something that really is affecting the quality of comic books?
Is that directed at me?
Yes. You'd be the one on the inside.
I think it's the easier of the two. And I think if the ESG and BlackRock and these different financial institutions can dictate terms to different businesses and take control that way, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. And once again, I think it's probably the easier route. The path of least resistance. It's like when I started self-publishing and like hanging out with Comicsgate, I had people say absurd things like, you're on the wrong side of history. You got to be on the right side of history. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, history hasn't played out yet. How do you know what the right side or the wrong side is? This is really absurd. But they were going with the path of least resistance. They were going with the path like, this is what the people that can get them work, and this is that type of thing. So they placated them, and I think that's what kind of built and gave the stuff power. And just one more thing, like what these financial institutes do is they also make it hard for them to get loans, so they can dictate terms and things like that. So if a business can't get loans to build, their companies, then they're screwed. So they have to play by these new ESG rules. Otherwise, they don't get funds. They get low ratings as far as stocks, things like that. So I do think it does play into it. So I do think a lot of this more what we call SJW type of things are happening because the companies aren't loyal to the customers anymore, like making better product for the customers. They're making product for ESG. So, I think like the beginning of the end was when comic book shops started becoming like the only place you could get comic books. So there wasn't the direct or the newsstand anymore. There was only the direct market. So you're kind of limiting exposure. And then the problem with that is then you're kind of just selling to the comic shops. You're not selling to the customer anymore, or you're selling to the like Diamond or Capital City or whoever, was at the time. So you're selling to them and then they're selling to the retailer, but there's this disconnect between you and the customer. So you're not like building or creating a comic book that goes right to the newsstand. They either buy it or don't, and then immediately if it's connecting or not. And so I think that's kind of like what's happening with like this ESG is there's a different person that these publishers are selling to up front. Does that make sense? Like they're selling to everybody except for the consumer, Yeah,
the ESG stuff is like is a money thing, and then DEI obviously is like internal programming and stuff like that.
Right. So that's like, so they can get the ESG funds. They create these DEI, divisions, and so then they have somebody that I guess these institutions, these financial institutions, trust, to execute their policies, which is, like I don't know, transgenderism, like flavor of the month, like it changes every week. There's something new. That we have to be sensitive to. We have to speak a certain way. We have to treat people in a certain, way. It's just ridiculous. But ultimately, you're not making product for the customer or the reader or the fan base anymore. You're placating somebody else.
I do want to say, If you noticed, I had a pretty decent sized earthquake happening here.
Yes.
Just a few
Oh,
minutes
is that
ago.
why you paused?
It's probably the third biggest or second biggest earthquake I've ever experienced. I had one in Alaska that felt bigger.
Oh shit!
And then there was another one here about 2 years ago. But that one felt pretty darn big. It was definitely shaking the house. So there we go. That was fun. Sleep at Dinkle. It's ironic that a lot of these modern creators who want to discount continuity rely on it to engage any interest in their stories to begin with. Yeah, they're just basically telling the same stories over and over again, Doc. We just got a new version of Cable today.
Yep.
Right.
We did.
Well, let me go back just for a minute, like Tom Brevoort. We were talking about Brevoort, just to maybe bring a different side to this. Maybe Tom Brevoort, with all the stuff that we're talking about, like DEI and ESG and all this craziness, maybe he's just literally throwing his hands up. Maybe he's broken. You know what I mean? Maybe this system broke that guy. So he's still kind of in power. So then he just figures out a way to make it easier, since he can't really appease two gods, right? So he's got the ESG people, and then he's got the fan base. He just throws his hands up and says, no continuity. It'll just make it a lot easier for this company to move forward if we just don't care as much, you know? Just like giving up.
Well, yeah. I mean, most of them, in my opinion, still in the comics industry have given up. I mean, we were joking earlier that you know, in Venom 36 we essentially, or 35, what issue was it, Wes? 35. Yeah, we essentially just got them making Cable again, literally just exact same design, exact same backstory, exact same everything, except for it's Dylan Brock, the member of the Brock family that nobody cared to know even existed in the first place. Yeah, they're just doing that. That's because it's easier, because they don't have to do any work. All they got to do is go to the dollar bins, go pull out some old issues, copy what you and Fabian did, and resell it.
Except for with dollar bin, they just go to Wikipedia and was like, "What's that story people talk about?"
They don't even have to pay $1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Give me the background.
Anyway, real quick, like everything's okay, right? I didn't mean to gloss over that. Your family.
No, we're good. It was a little bigger than normal. I feel good. A couple of earthquakes a year, but that one was substantial.
Yeah, where you live, they build those dwellings to take those earthquakes, right?
More like typhoons are the fear. Or the big fear. I can actually throw a rock into the ocean from my house. We're that close, but thankfully we're on the side of the island that doesn't take the brunt of the typhoon.
Okay.
Or otherwise, we would be getting lots of flooding and stuff like that. So,
well, good to hear.
That was a big one.
Okay.
I wonder if it was in the 7s, because it normally doesn't shake the house back and forth. Weird, kind of freaked me out. I was figuring out in my head. I was like, how am I getting the kids out of here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's continuity. Probably the one selling point they have, but they're just giving up on it. Caleb says the Joker is the one that killed that shrink.
Yes.
Thibert. Very nice. And then Lane says, is Batman Gotham's greatest villain? Or is Gotham Batman's greatest villain? Gotham is certainly one of Batman's greatest villains.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely Joker. Joker is the greatest villain. Is he the greatest villain in comic book history?
Doom.
Dr. Doom?
Doom is a better villain.
All right. Here we go. What do you think, Dylan? Are you a Doom or are you a Joker guy?
Oh, third option, Lex Luthor, obviously.
Lex is number one?
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously Lex is number one.
He can cure cancer and doesn't give a crap.
Yeah. Jim, who's a better villain? Is it Lex? Was it Joker? What was it?
I thought it was Tom King, but I'll go with Joker. Joker is.
Tom King is comics' greatest villain.
Tom King is.
Lex achieved ultimate power in Action Comics 900 and threw it all away because he hated Superman so much. All he had to do was just not hate Superman for like a second. He couldn't do it.
What do you think, Sparrow? Who's the greatest villain?
Dr. Doom.
See,
You're right.
two
no
for
doubt,
Doom.
No doubt in my mind.
I
Two
think
for
Weather,
Doom,
Weather Wizard is the best.
Ask
Mad
Tom
Cat.
King, and it's Kite Man.
Yeah.
Well, I remember
All
when
right.
they were doing the run up to the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, and they were like, "Who's your favorite Batman villain?" He was like, "Condiment King," and it was just like, "Oh,
Good answer. Sleeve McDakel says, Dylan, my favorite Lex moment was when he had one of his employees sniped in front of his family at dinner because he told Lex making a power ring was impossible. Action Comics 890.
Yeah, that was during the Black Ring arc. That was where after Lex had during Blackest Night and all that, he had an Orange Lantern ring, and he loved the power of it so much. So he's like, I gotta find a new ring. So he wanted to find a Black Lantern ring because he couldn't believe they all got disintegrated. And one of his employees told him, "You can't get a ring. You're not supposed to have that power. You can't do it." So he's like, "I'm gonna fire you and make sure you're not hireable ever again." And so the guy kind of went crazy and tried to beat Lex's ass. And so then Lex had him sniped in front of his family at dinner later that night. So yeah, Lex is not the chillest guy.
He's a good guy. He just saved the entire universe in Batman.
Yeah, he's a family man now, so he's a good guy again.
I hate it when they do that stuff.
So he's a bitch.
dumb.
hey,
Especially
Doom saved all of reality by stitching it together on Battleworld." You know,
But the only
and Reed
reason
Richards
Doom would
couldn't.
do that would be to do something for himself.
Yes, and
Yes,
you
yes.
don't. And I would have to believe that this Family Man Lex Luthor storyline will ultimately have a revelation that he had some sinister, self-aggrandizing motivation.
He's not going to remember it. He's basically been lobotomized now. Spoilers. I'm sorry if you didn't finish House of Brainiac.
No.
He's stupid now. He came out and he's like,
Simple
"Who's
Lex.
Lex Luthor?" Yes.
Well, so are the stories. So it all
Oh,
works out.
the stories. The writer doesn't have to write an intelligent villain anymore.
I thought House of Brainiac was fine.
Oh, so they can
Right.
hire Slot onto the book now.
Slot's probably dreamed of doing Superman. They can make him 15 again. They can make him Superboy. Since he's Arrested Development man, gotta de-age everybody, like in their mind only. There you go. Is that ultimately what's your favorite Lex Luthor moment, Dylan? Is it the cancer thing?
That's one of the better ones, but not really a moment, but the entirety of the Lex Luthor Man of Steel from Thibert. That whole story was everything about that, seeing Lex's perspective on how he views Superman. That's probably like my favorite Lex thing ever from Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermo. That was so good. Seeing
Reading Action Comics and Lex Luthor, in order to win a chess match when he was 9, he was going to lose. So he went and killed his opponent's dog. So he'd be sad when he played so he could defeat him. That's pretty good.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to
That's the
do it.
way to do it.
Jean Kent defeated Lex Luthor in chess in like 2 seconds.
By
That was
going
See,
to
but
the
that's-
library.
That's actually not a smart move, Wes, because as a G.I. Joe fan, you and I both know a man who kills a dog pulls his own sled one day.
Maybe. Is no one to have to battle?
That's the Eskimo Quinn.
Very nice. Thank you very much to everyone for supporting the channel. Had a lot of fun here today. We're not going to get to a second topic, but these are always fun discussions when they're nice and long and we have good times. So we are going to get to some comic book recommendations, but before that, there is an Indiegogo campaign right now, fully funded. You've been talking about this the last few times we had you on the channel, Mr. Thibert, Oodles and Doodles, and other stuff.
Yes, it's my art book. I'm finding it right now. I can share it with you guys if you'd like. Copy.
Yes.
Let's bring it over and present it to the crowd, the masses here. There it is. You should have it now. So this is Oodles of Doodles and other stuff too. This is a lavish hardbound art book showcasing the various creative sides of me. So we are at 7,330. I think we're day 4 now. 55 backers. There's always room for more. But before I go any further, I'd like to thank everybody that supported this, that has shared out. You guys are the best. I could not do what I do independently without you. And I want to stay here. I want to stay in this place. I don't want to go back to Marvel and DC. So let's keep these indie projects going strong. So here it is. This is a coffee table size book, hardbound. Like I said, it's 9 by 12. and there are 60 pages, glossy stock pages in it. And Oodles is filled with images that come from my Marvel, DC, Image, and CG days. There are also condoodles, commissions, create your own IPs, and pop culture visuals galore. Art style has been honed to perfection after over 40 years in the comic industry and viewing life through his own love of the art form itself. So this is going to have 40 years of my career in one book. Yeah, it was hard to try to figure out what artwork would stay and what would go, but I think I got a pretty good handle on it. And I got a quote from a living legend. This is Kevin Nolan, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. You know, we kind of, there's a lot of problems with the industry, but you know what? There's a lot of great people, a lot of generous people in this industry as well. And Kevin Nolan is one of them. So I want to thank Kevin Nolan. And also, he inked me for this Batman headshot. So we were at a convention together. I drew this thing up. I asked him if he would ink it. He did. And so now I have this image to put in this campaign. So again,
Shatner. Now we're talking.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of pop culture stuff. So obviously, you know, Captain Kirk. We got Gigantor in this. We got some CG stuff. We got Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog. We got Del Keown and Mandy Summers' Gemshock, and John Malin's Graveyard Shift Lilith in the corner over here, the right-hand bottom corner. Speaking of Cable, this was promotional artwork that I did for Marvel in the early 90s. I think they used it for the diamond cover, and then later it was made into a retail poster. So that's in the book as well. So I got some creator-owned IP things I did for Hollywood. So after Marvel told me I'd never work there again and fired me, I took 2 years and just worked in animation. So Hit is one of those shows that I created. And so the only place you're ever going to see this artwork is in this book. And there's a few of my animation IPs in the book. So there's a lot of fun stuff, not just, you know, comic book stuff. There's some of my advertising work. There's some packaging design for toys, different things like that that are in here. This is Billy Tucci's She. So this is a work in progress, double page here. So Del Keown said I could use his character. So I made a print out of one of the images that I put together in the past. This is going to make Aaron happy. So we're working on Black and White Volume 3, Sins of the Father. And then this is one of the big bads that Aaron and I are bringing into the storyline. So also, Aaron and I are going to be celebrating this 30th anniversary of Black and White. So the series, Volume 3, is going to launch in October. And that's when 20 or 30 years ago, that's when the original series was launched as well through Image Comics. So it's been 30 years, and in October is when the new series will launch. So this is one of the big bads. Her name is Juju. We have all kinds of different prints. Set A, we got set B. And keep in mind, too, all these tiers come with a book. So the book is signed and numbered. So a very limited print run. This is also commemorative headshots. This is the new power suits that Aaron and I are bringing into the storyline. So we got that, and then I got some commissions. Here's an example. This is a Spider-Man commission I did a while ago, and then here is what is the name? Voodoo from Wildcats. Yeah, some years ago. So yeah, you guys, please check it out. It is a 60-day campaign, so get in early. Also, there are 2 early bird special tiers that are going to be pulled down this Sunday. So if you back those tiers, you'll get that pit print absolutely free. So we're going to throw this print here in with your orders. So get in soon, because it's going to go away. So thank you, you guys, for indulging me on that. Thanks, Wes, for sharing time with me.
Well, appreciate that. Jib apparently had a bounce out of there. I'm sorry, Jib. Hopefully everything is going good, but I can basically tell you what he's going to recommend. No, he must have had something come up. I looked up and I was wondering, why did this earthquake feel so freaking huge? It happened 40 kilometers away from me.
The epicenter, yeah, it was close.
Yes, so there we go. I was not expecting that. Now I understand why it felt like it was so close, because I was literally almost on top of it. Antoine Haynes needs recommendations for a full Spider-Man and Batman line to get already. Got Uncanny X-Men on the way. All right, Doc, you're the Spider-Man guy. What's the full Spider-Man line he needs to get? Uh-oh. Doc is gone? He must be getting a year.
Oh, no. I'm here. Sorry. I didn't realize I was still muted. I'm not sure what he means by a full line. Like, is he talking about
like a run?
An entire run? I mean, because I would recommend getting all of volume 1 of ASM, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny.
I'm sure he's getting the omnibuses or something.
I mean,
he said he's got Uncanny on the way. I'm sure he didn't get all.
Hey, maybe our boy here hit the lottery and he decided, I'm going to just buy an entire run. I found one on eBay that was sitting there for a couple of years for about $250,000.
I'd say do Steve Ditko Spider-Man. That's the one.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're just talking about a run and you're buying in trade or omnibus or whatever, I would definitely go with the Lee Ditko ASM without a doubt. I have the first 3 omnibus of it. I think I need to pick up 4 and I think 5. But no, it's wonderful storytelling, great, kind of that building blocks of Peter Parker, the continuity that made him into the Peter Parker that is a billion-dollar franchise that sells more merch than Batman and Superman combined.
All right, let's talk about Batman. Dylan, what do you think is the Batman run line to get into?
Yeah, I'm gonna say something a bit more out of the blue. I'll say Paul Dini's run that he did in like the early mid 2000s with Streets of Gotham and Detective Comics. I thought that was really fun. I liked a lot of what he did there with Dick Grayson's Batman, and he told some cool stories there. And a lot of time it's like Scott Snyder, Grant Morrison. I feel like it's the go-to. People talk about like what Batman run to get in, or Denny O'Neil, but Paul Dini had a cool little run.
So it's funny you say Dick Grayson's. I was gonna say the Grant Morrison Batman and Robin with Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne, which I think is fantastic because it's juxtaposed to traditional Batman and Robin characterization in the way that they work together.
Yeah, that run's great too.
There's a couple ideas. Really appreciate that, Anton. Hopefully we're able to help you out. We got some comic book recommendations besides, obviously, your project that's up on Indiegogo right now, and there's a link in the video description if you need to find it. Oodles and Doodles and other stuff. Do you have any other comic books you think that are worth recommending or reading today, Art?
I say do search Indiegogo, Kickstarter, start supporting some of these indies because I think there's some really interesting stuff coming out of that. I don't really read mainstream anymore, so I can't really recommend anything like that. But I know like there's a lot of good, interesting Comicsgate books. There's the Aaron Lopresti stuff. There's Graham Nolan's, Andy Smith, all the bros, those books are guaranteed a good time. So yeah, I say support the indies. That's where you're going to get the excitement from, and that's where the excitement is actually, as far as I'm concerned.
Very nice, Mr. Sparrow. Do you have any comic books that you think people should read this week?
Well, if you guys missed out on Ghost Machine's first offerings, there's a bunch of reprints out this week. I think Rook Exodus #1 is in reprint, as well as Redcoat. So, you want to get some great art and some fun stories. I recommend checking those out. My other big recommendation for this week from the mainstream would be G.I. Joe 307.
Scarlet #2?
No, absolutely not. It's going to be G.I. Joe, though. It's going to be G.I. Joe 307. That continues to cook. So I recommend that. And then, I'm going to back up Art and say, if you want excitement, if you want passion, if you want people that actually care about what they're doing, go check out all of the great stuff on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. There's so many great books out right now. Like he was saying, Aaron Lopresti's Wraith of God. Right now he's doing, I think, Kit Carter Planet Doom. Yep, Kit Carter Planet Doom is still, and that's, Aaron loves that kind of like John Carter of Mars kind of stuff. So, he's really going to put some extra mustard on that hot dog for you. I recommend that. I recommend going and checking out Fiendish by Irene, who we've had here on the channel before. Yeah, just go check out the indie stuff, man. There's so much good stuff happening in that space. I feel bad because I can't support it all and because I can't recommend it all. But maybe we need to do that, Wes. Maybe we need to do just a wrap up of independent projects, as part of the Patreon, or even just a weekly video or a monthly video. What's good this week in crowdfunding?
Well, those books are like $60 for shipping to me. I don't get to read them.
Well, I mean, we can talk about the ones
overseas.
And obviously, with a lot of these projects, you're going on faith. You're like, I trust this creator, or this project looks good, because you don't have it. You can't thumb through it at the store. You got to jump in on it. But we can talk about the ones that look interesting to us, whether or not we can afford to have them shipped to us.
All right, yeah, we'll throw that on the Geek Fix. It'll become a new staple of the program.
Nice.
Sounds good. And probably would Doc take pictures with his fans? Doc has fans. It's the most ludicrous idea in the world. If his voice is recognized at conventions. Doc, you choking on heaters again?
Fuck me. I keep muting myself. Yes, I would. I mean, I don't really care.
Doc is not hiding his identity. Like, there are pictures of Doc
really
on the internet.
Not.
You can go on my Instagram and you can see a picture of Doc from when we last time we had dinner.
Yes.
It's and if we make this fan expo thing happen next year in Dallas, and all the aficionados there, we're trying to get Doc to come down, and we'd like to do a big panel discussion with as many aficionados as we can get on there. So that would be kind of fun.
Dallas, I'm in Texas, so it's a few hour drive. So
there you go. Yeah.
If we do end up doing Aficionados Live, I'm totally wearing a mask for the show. Just
of your logo, just like
that umbrella guy.
I don't know. No, I'll literally have this thing, whatever the fuck this thing from Warren Ellis was that I stole. I'll have that printed onto a mask and just wear that.
Very nice.
People.
Dylan, do you take pictures with fans if you see them at conventions?
Yeah, I've taken pictures of people. I don't have any problems with any of that. So
very nice. So you're not uppity?
No, I'm not uppity.
Very gracious.
Yeah, no problems
Very
at
nice. You recommended any comic books?
Yeah, I got kind of a weak week, but I got
week is a better way to put it.
Neil Four's Odd number 7, one of the weaker issues, but I still enjoyed it, and Legion of Superheroes fan, so it's cool seeing that. Wolverine Deep Cut number 1 was good. And that was kind of like only recommendations for this week, so I went back and read some back issues, and I'd say Riddle Me That, one of my favorite Riddler stories. I went back and read that, where Riddler kind of got he got like an edgy 2000s makeover, but it's still pretty good, from Legends of the Dark Knight issues 185 through 189. So if you're looking for back issue street, I say check that out.
Very nice. You got anything coming up on the channel or the Twitch or anything that people need to know about?
I just did a video on the new DC storyline, for Absolute Power number 1. So if you want to hear about that, you can check that out. And I also did a video talking about the leaked Superman set stuff with Superman's costume and my thoughts on that. So you can go check that out on the channel.
That's how you get the balloons. I do the peace sign.
They
just showed up randomly on me. I was like, was it a thumbs up? There you go. So definitely support Dylan. I got links to all their YouTubes and social medias and stuff in the video description. Last but not least, Doc, are you recommending any books this week? Venom 35, perhaps?
I am most certainly not recommending Venom 35. That was 3 goddamn years. They're still telling the exact same fucking story as they were in issue 1. I didn't think it was possible. Holy shit, Al Ewing learned from Ram V on that.
I wish Doc didn't hold back his emotions so much.
I know, right? So instead, we're going to recommend, again, old comics.
Hey, Doc, I can't see that. Can you move it over to like the far left or right?
Yeah, I can. As a matter of fact.
There you go.
So, yeah.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
You know what? I always love these old covers where they interacted with the page. Like where the character either was interacting with like the masthead or the page or something like that, so that it gave it a little bit more of a metatextual feel.
Do you remember the Marks of Vestry one where he's ripping across the cover and there's actually holes in it? And you can see the cover behind it or the soft cover.
Wolverine number 50. I have a number of copies of that. I love that book. Anytime they've done that, it's always fun. Now, is it a little gimmicky? Sure, yeah. But you know what? It's worth it. So we're going to go with X-Men 207 because it's just a cool cover. And it's a great story inside. Then we will go with Uncanny 266 because first Gambit. And since we're getting the relaunch of Uncanny X-Men and Gail Simone has the worst Cajun accent ever written on the page, I need to give you somewhere where it's not terrible.
I hope she brings back those tiger striped pants and that banana hammock.
I know the banana hammock. Oh yeah, there we go. I gotta molestify Gambit on the page here.
Such a weird costume choice for that cover.
Yeah, and you know what? This is a weird issue because for some reason it was a fill-in issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Collins ended up being the fill-in artist for this when, I think this is the only issue that he did.
Gambit actually charges something with his eyes in that issue, and then they never did that again.
Nope.
Like the energy comes out of his eyes and charges something.
Yeah, they did. This is, again, early on, new long shot replacement. And they never really they feels like and this is the one great thing about most people when it comes to continuity and old books is they can kind of forgive that kind of stuff where it's like, you're trying stuff out, you're still trying to feel out the character. It's once they're established.
Yep.
That's when people like, oh, well, in Uncanny 266, he charged something with his eyes. So it totally makes sense for us to use that again now.
Mm-hmm.
No, it isn't. They forgot about that because it was dumb and they just didn't ever touch it again. He might have done it then, but it doesn't count.
It was a metaphor. It didn't actually happen.
And then we will go with yet another. The reason why Rogue and Gambit broke up in the first place. Because again, in the new Uncanny book, I can't even figure out where Rogue's jacket ends and Gambit starts. That one page from the preview just broke my brain. Figure out different line weights, people. But this is the non-foil version of Uncanny 350, and it's a good read. Joe Mad art with Gambit and Rogue captured by Nanny and Orphan Maker and being held in the South Pole or something like that. And this is where we find out that Gambit was actually hired by Sinister and was the cause of the mutant massacre. So, because he did all the recon work for the Marauders, that when they went in and killed all the mutants or all the Morlocks in the tunnels. So, good fun book. Check it out. This is the non-foil version. I still need to find the newsstand, but that's it for me this week.
Well, very nice. Well, that's it for us this week. That's the Comics Aficionados. We got everything in. Once again, make sure you support Art Thibert. There's a link in the video description to the ongoing Indiegogo. We'll likely have Art back on the channel here in the next week or so. Anyway, I really appreciate all that stuff. Have a great weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed the 4th of July. And I'll see you next weekend for the Comics Aficionados.